Oh, hello, everyone, and good morning, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where, as always, we learn through the misfortunes of others. I'm your host, Uncivil Law, licensed attorney in Texas, Virginia, and before the Supreme Court. Hope you're having a great day. And we are continuing our coverage of Chad Daybell. Let me just reduce the exposure a little bit because it's a little bright outside. We are continuing our coverage of Chad Daybell. Yesterday, we heard the opening statements, and we began to hear from Detective Ray Hermosillo, who was the detective who was charged with finding the children in response to a welfare check from the grandmother. So that's how this party started in a lot of ways, and I think a very reasonable place to start. So far, we heard from the detective about how he went to the home to look for the children. The parents are like, they're with the grandmother. The detective's like, that doesn't make a lot of sense because, the grandmother's the one who made the call, and then kind of things just deteriorated from there with no particularly great responses from the parties. We also heard about how the mother was given an order to produce the children, which of course did not occur. And we've also heard from the detectives about how they tried to look for the children by contacting people, contacting relatives, sending out the all alerts, contacting the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and other things along that genre. We also saw some evidence from the garage and sort of things that they had and accoutrements. And that was kind of where we left the testimony yesterday. So a very good, reasonable start to the prosecution's case in evidence. I thought the way that they started the case was very good, and it's a reasonable way to go, and so that's where we're at. So I think we are continuing with the testimony from the detective. I think we're continuing the testimony this morning, and we'll go from there. So we're just waiting for the court to get started. The court is in session, but nothing is happening yet. Good morning to everyone. Good morning, Green-Eyed Southern Girl, Tony, Flower Cottage, Azul, Marie, Kate, Stonebleeds, CTY, Pesky Pirouette, nice name, Verandia Carvalho, and others. Thank you for joining us this morning. Hope you're having a great day. Was I surprised that Chad's kids will be testifying? Not especially. I'm not particularly surprised by anything at this point, in a lot of ways. It'll be interesting, of course, to see what they have to say. I think it's going to be a while before we hear from them. I imagine they'll be one of the later witnesses, if I had to guess. So we're starting, you want to sandwich your case. When you want to start strong, you want to end strong. So I would think that the children's testimony would be more in the things that you'd want to have highlighted. So I would think that, we're starting strong with how the investigation began, the missing children, the investigation steps that took, the fact that the mother and father went off to Hawaii to have their wedding while the kids were missing. Although, of course, we know that they were dead. Odd time to be celebrating. Also, the kids weren't with them at the wedding. How odd, right? So we heard a lot of testimony along those lines. We heard how the detective went to Hawaii to help the Hawaii people as part of their investigation into the whole thing. So we got a lot of very interesting testimony that paints a very bad picture in sort of what's going on here. Why is the father getting married with their kids not there, and not seeming particularly concerned that the kids are not there? That seems a little odd. So what's up with that? So, yeah, they got married about 2 weeks after Chad's wife died. That's right. That's right. So there were many things about it that were confusing at best. I'll give you a view of the whole courtroom if I can find a good feed for it. Preferably one that does not have their branding on screen would be nice. Okay, there we go. And then we will zoom in for the witness testimony when we have a witness on the stand. Lori was buying wedding rings before Tammy died? Yeah. Which, you know, yeah. There were many things about this that were, you know, providing some interesting clues.
If we could have the jury trial. Yes, no.
OJ is dead, according to TMZ. Okay. Noted. Oh, no. Anyway. Good morning, Kate. Hey, Alan Parker, thank you for being here. As always, Alan Parker is a strong contributor to the channel, and we do appreciate his help. I think I'll turn down the ISO a bit more. I'm feeling a little blown out by the sun today. So we'll just turn it down and adjust as needed. Oh. Yeah. So how's everyone feeling today? I'm actually feeling very good. I'm in reasonably positive spirits today, which is nice. No particular reason. It's just, you know, some days are good days and some days are bad days. And at least for the moment, I feel like I'm in a good day. So, you know, we take the victories where we can get them. I was also working a little bit on my Supreme Court petition this morning before stream. I stopped writing for the moment the sort of why the lower court was wrong section and started writing the why you should take this case section. So Supreme Court petitions have two major sections, right? Sort of once you get to the argument, once you get past the introduction stuff, they have two major sections. Section 1, why did the court screw it up? Section 2, why should we hear this? So I stopped writing the why did the court screw it up section and started writing the why should the court hear this section, which is by far and away the hardest
good morning, everyone.
part of the thing. The Supreme Court grants something like 1 out of 160 cases, give or take. So it's less than 1%. It's so, you know, but hey, you know, there are worse odds at things. We'll see.
Mr. Wood was conducting examination.
Above all, I just want to do the best job possible for my client, obviously.
Yes, sir.
So I would like to write something that is as good as it can possibly be. So we're working on it.
The court also notes
I hope to have a rough draft before the end of the month. That is my working goal. I have 90 days from the day of the day of denial to file, so I've got time. But you know, I want to have a rough draft in place so I can start sending it around to some people I trust for notes.
As well. One other matter I just wanted to bring up before we got started with additional evidence is the court's.
And then I have to decide: do I accept the notes or do I reject the notes? Which is the great thing about being the person behind the person who is signing the thing, right? It's like it's my call, which is nice. It's like I get to make the final decision, which pleases me. So that's nice.
I'd ask the attorneys if they could.
Thank you. I do my best.
Of course, that helps as well with our.
If the Supreme Court does grant review, I feel reasonably positive about my odds
comes
on the
directly
merit
through the
stage.
court's
So if I can get past the
official
will you accept
channel,
this
that can be
case
somewhat
to the
difficult to find if
can
you
I
go to
win
the
now
Supreme
stage,
Court website.
I feel reasonably
However,
positive
there
about
is
the
a
can I win
website
now stage.
on Ada County
So
about
that's
this
helpful
trial, and if you just
in a lot of
Google the
ways.
term Ada County Daybell trial, there's an easy link to find for the court's official live stream.
We'll see.
And that's the most direct signal. So for those that are observing the trial online,
Yeah, the natural light is a little bright this morning. I had to turn down the ISO quite a lot to not be completely blown out, but that's okay.
Go to that direct signal,
We can adjust for that.
Source of the live stream proceeding. So with that, then we had Detective Hermosillo was on the stand yesterday, and I believe he was continuing.
Here comes the sun. Do 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 do. Here comes the sun.
Right,
Also, I bought a Febreze
additional testimony. Thank you.
plug-in, and it's one of the dual plugins that it has 2 cents. And right in there at the moment is something called wood. I think it's called wood or woods. It's meant to smell like the wood or woods. And this makes the apartment smell very nice. So, hey, there you go. Just a little bit of fragrance. I have it on the medium setting right now. I might turn it down to like low. Just like have a hint of fragrance. But, you know, little things, man. Little things to make your life a little bit better.
All right, Detective Hermosillo was sworn in yesterday. I'll remind you, you are still.
I'm glad you like it when I sing. I like singing too.
And
I like singing because it's an expression of my feeling. It's you know, as I said, I'm feeling good today, and it's I sing because I'm happy. And so it's like, yes, I am happy. It's like I'll do a little song, a little ditty for you. Here comes the sun. Do 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 do. It's all right. Do 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 do.
What you had found or what you had observed
sun, here we
burial
come.
site, and just for purposes of the jury,
Sun, here we come.
what site were you at
Yeah.
when you found the body?
This case, of course, is the first death penalty case that any of us in the LawTube genre have ever covered.
JJ's burial site.
So that makes it interesting on a whole number of levels.
Your Honor,
It'll be interesting to see as we go on what people's attitudes are. And it'll be interesting to see if anyone's attitudes towards the death penalty in the chat change. As opposed to what you think is an appropriate remedy for this horror. Assuming, of course, you think he's guilty. Although, yeah, he's probably guilty. So, yeah. The picture the state has already painted is not great. You know. And then, of course, we're going to find the kids buried in his yard. And that's a lot of explaining to do. So, yeah. How is Houston? Houston's good. I enjoy hanging out with Nate. Nate and I go to the gym 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I obviously didn't go on Monday because of the eclipse, but I did go Wednesday. It's one of the reasons my stream was a little bit late, but that's okay. And yeah, his kids love me. Yeah, so I knew his kids, or I met his kids, I should say, when we were in New York. I went and took his eldest daughter, and we got manicures together in New York. His eldest daughter's like, she's not that old. I want to say 8, something like that. But yeah, we went and got manicures together, and it was great.
Through 10M.
Yeah, the sunny day helps. The fact that the sun is out helps a lot. Natural daylight is good for my mood. So, yeah, having the blinds open is a good thing. I probably do need to go to Michael's or something and get the glass on this painting replaced with a non-reflective glass, so it's a little bit less glary. But that's something to do. Does Nate stream too? Not as much, no. Nate does a lot more edited videos. He's gone back and forth. He has done some streaming in the past, but at the moment he is doing a lot more edited videos. quite successfully, might I add. And so, you know, fair enough. At this point, I personally think it would be better for Chad to get life without parole. That's a fair opinion. And that's a fair opinion. Vitamin D. Everyone needs vitamin D. That's also a good thing, yes. I got a different toothpaste from Walmart. Went with this Crest 3D whitening thing. So we'll see if it makes my teeth even whiter and more glorious. That'll be fun. Could definitely be whiter. We'll work on it.
Detective, can you review those exhibits and let me know when you had a chance to?
Nate's a cool guy. Nate is my best friend in LawTube by far and away. And, you know, who can say why exactly, but we've clicked. Or we clicked and we really enjoy each other's company. And we grew up together a lot, in a lot of ways, in YouTube, in LawTube. We grew up a lot of ways. We came on the scene, I think Nate was a little bit later than me, but we certainly went through the growth and development stage together a lot. And
10B through 10M? Yes.
You know,
What do they report to be?
there's some camaraderie there.
Photographs.
And even when I was in Austin, he used to call me like 3 times a week, give or take, just to say hi and see how I'm doing and things like that. He's a good friend. He really is.
Do you know when these photographs were taken?
On June 9th, 2020.
Were you the
Oh, good. Jeff said he'd love to be with you on to talk about Daybell. That'd be great. I sent him a Twitter DM and he never responded to it.
And were you able to?
So if tell Legal Vices to respond to his Twitter DMs.
Yes.
Because I sent him a Twitter DM, say, hey, would you like to join me for the trial coverage? And he never got back to me. Jerk.
Representations of what you observed on June 9th, 2020.
Yes.
Your Honor, I move for Commissioner of State's exhibits 10B through 10M.
Any objection?
Judge, just to,
Into the microphone, please, Mr. Pryor.
I'm sorry, Judge. Judge, just one here on 10B.
I asked him on April 2nd. I'd like to note for the record.
Okay, so let's.
I sent him a DM on April the 2nd, 9 days ago, asking him if he wanted to co-stream or otherwise do things together. So this isn't on me.
Is that right?
Yes.
Now.
Yes.
And the vehicle that's parked in 10B, is that the vehicle that was the position of the vehicle?
I'll just send a message. Rumor has it
That's not the vehicle
that
Mr.
you
Daybell's in.
might
That would be-
want to stream
is
with me.
the
Maybe
driveway was a Subaru.
respond
Okay, is that the driveway
to
that
my
you made reference
DMs?
to?
Question mark, smiley face.
So in other words, somebody else's vehicle is there, we don't know
Oh,
whose vehicle
Lord.
that is?
It's not the one that Mr. Daybell
Check
was in.
mod chat, will
But
do.
you don't know whose vehicle that is?
I don't know whose vehicle that is.
You don't know when the vehicle was put there?
No, sir.
You don't know who the
Thank
owner
you,
of the
Tony.
vehicle is?
That's correct.
Always appreciated.
I would object, Judge, on foundation.
So yeah, I sent a message to Legal Vices and Danny on direct because they're both ex-Mormon, I believe,
So you don't know who.
and
whose
I thought they
vehicle that
might
is,
be
correct?
interested in covering it with me, so I sent them a message.
But you were still there that day.
And I remain open to streaming with them, and if they want to do some sort of co-streaming, we could do that too. Like we could do the same stream and we could each stream the thing on our platform or something. I don't know. It'd be fun. I'm open.
Foundation has been laid.
All right,
Judge, I just make a record that I'm objecting also on the basis of relevance. It looks like it's.
I feel healthy and happy. I do feel healthy and happy.
Well, the picture shows many
The gym
things,
has been good to me.
allows
And
states to have this
the medication
submitted,
has been good to me, although of course now
Vision Foundation's been
we have to
established, so
once again go
10B
through the
is
pain
as
of the
well
whole
as
thing. So, medication update.
Detective, if you will.
The doctor I was using in Austin, who I was like, you know what, I'll just continue using the doctor even though my health plan only covers Austin. It's the most weird insurance I've ever heard of in my life. It's a health insurance plan that only covers the county of Austin. Or more to the point, I suppose, it only has doctors and hospitals in Austin. So I was like, well, I moved to Houston, which is no longer in Austin. So that's a problem for me. So I was like, but you know what? I'm just going to stick with the same doctor, because finding a doctor who will prescribe the meds is a challenge. And then my insurance company called me.
Coming out and standing in the long
And they're like,
area.
hey, just to let you know, this doctor is no longer inside our network. So they're no longer within your plan.
That way back then. And that's the driver he was sitting in the house.
So moving does qualify as a life-changing condition for going back on the exchange. So as I'm sure you may know, with the Obamacare Affordable Care Act, they typically have open season. But there are reasons that you can change your insurance at other times. And one of the qualifying conditions is I've moved. So I went back on the exchange and I've selected a new exciting health insurance, which by the way covers multiple different counties in Texas. Not all of Texas, but still covers a lot of Texas. And so I'm waiting to hear from my new insurance company, about getting my information about my card and stuff like that. And then I have to go and find a new doctor who will prescribe me the medications, and we have to go through this thing all over again. How fun and exciting for all of us. So that's a little bit disturbing.
I was facing this direction. And I aligned myself with Mr. Daybell, who was up here more, and he was looking towards this area here.
So we'll see.
Now, can you see the first burial site from where you're from that location?
Yes, it's the tree I spoke about.
Hopefully it won't be
earlier.
as much of a
This is the
faff this
tree
time.
Where
We'll see.
JJ was buried underneath. This right here is the pond. You can see just
The problem for the particular medication I'm on is it's in an ADHD class of medications. It's Vyvanse. I've talked about it before. It's on label, which is to say it's typically prescribed for ADHD and binge eating disorder. That's not the reason it was prescribed for me. It was prescribed for me for depression. I have to say it's been very effective towards that end. So it has been the most effective medication I've ever been on for depression, by far and away. However, for various combinations of reasons, the DEA has a bug up their ass about ADHD medications. If you go online and you search for it, you will find news articles for the last year and change talking about the ADHD medication shortage, which we have lived together, you and I. As last time I had called 27 pharmacies, no lie, no cap, to just find one that had it in stock.
Correct, it was that morning, yes.
The reason that they have such a hard time keeping it in stock is because the DEA is squeezing everybody. The reason that you have such a hard time finding a doctor to prescribe the medication is because the DEA is squeezing everybody. The DEA apparently is under the impression or concern that the ADHD medications are the new Oxycontin or something, and have decided to squeeze everybody. So it makes it difficult to get the medication I need, because the DEA is a bunch of assholes. So screw you, DEA. Give me my drugs.
Jacob, I'm going to put up sticks into the 10A again, and if you can point to the approximate location of where this picture was taken from.
Yeah, man. Are they testifying? It looks like they are. I can't hear anything, though. Is there sound?
From this area right here.
And so it's fair to say from that location.
Oh, they are testifying. All right. I just have the volume set wrong or something. I have the wrong output. Oh, say my bad. Sorry. All right. So let's switch to this one. No. Let's switch to this one. No. Let's switch to this one. No. Oh. Duh. Lame. Lame. All right.
I testified earlier about
There we
the
go.
difference in length of grass and shrubs in that 6x6 section that was marked off next to the pond. This is what I'm referring to. If you look close, you can see there's smaller grass and dirt protruding right here. This is probably a little bit difficult to see. There's probably a better photograph. But this is longer shrubs through here, and then in here was like the length of sod and some dirt where there was nothing growing.
And when yesterday you testified when you called over to burial site 1, is that what it looked like when you got over there?
That's correct.
Detective, can you describe to the jury what you saw in State's Exhibit 10F?
So when I spoke about ERT removing the topsoil and the top level of shrubs, this is what I was speaking about. And you can start to see the 3 large white rocks I was talking about earlier starting to come through the dirt.
You testified yesterday about a smell. Was this the same time that you began to smell what you described yesterday?
Yes, as soon as they remove this and the topsoil, that's when I instantly can smell the smell of a decomposing body.
Detective, can you tell the jury what you saw in State's Exhibit 10? Or I'm sorry, 10G.
So as the ERT team methodically removed the soil around the white rocks and dug down just a little bit deeper, this is what we saw. You can start to see there was a smaller rock, but the 3 large white rocks started to show through clearly. When I testified that there was thin wood paneling underneath the white rocks, you can start to see the edge of that piece of wood paneling underneath the rocks. We also noticed that there were roots cut that the ERT team didn't cut. They were already pre-cut. And some of the roots are fairly thick, so that was something we observed as well in that burial site.
Detective, can you describe for the jury what you saw in State's Exhibit 10H?
After the ERT team removed the white rocks, this is the 2 pieces of wood paneling that were underneath.
What did you observe in State's Exhibit 10I?
I spoke earlier about the distinction in soil. Some of the soil looked wet or moist, some of it looked dry. Excuse me. What you're looking at here is once we remove the wood paneling, this is what was underneath, and you can start to see the distinction through here of the wet soil. And up here is just a dry soil. So the rocks and the paneling were all through here. So that was the other thing that we observed. And as we took the paneling off, the odor began to become a lot stronger. So we knew we were at the right spot.
Your Honor, I apologize for any delay. I wonder if we just have a very brief sidebar regarding the removal.
All right.
Oops. There you go. I'll make a nice little pinned comment in the chat for you. Okay, and we're not doing anything right now for some reason. Oh, the judge has just left the bench completely. Okay, well, that's different. All right. The judge left the bench. I guess he needed a pee break. And I was like, why aren't they talking? Oh, the judge left the bench. Oh, okay. No, it's... Oh, maybe it is a sidebar. Well, if it's a sidebar, the judge is not sitting at the bench, so I don't know what's going on. Did they have to move the sidebar somewhere else? They have a secret sidebar somewhere else? I guess they can't have the sidebar at the bench, maybe, because there's so many jurors or something. We've seen that before as a problem, where there's so many jurors that it doesn't lend itself to sidebars. I'm not a big sidebar guy, personally. So, if I ever become a judge, I'll be disinclined to allow sidebars. So maybe we'll just do speaking objections. I don't know. But sidebars, just... Oh, come on.
Stuart, you can continue.
Thank you. Detective, can you explain to the jury what you observed in State's Exhibit 10J?
Why don't I like sidebars?
So once we started removing the wet soil.
I don't know. They just always seem annoying.
To a black round object.
They just seem annoying.
This is what we started to see. It appeared to be like tight wrapped black plastic. And it wasn't very too far underneath.
I guess I dislike sidebars because it's interrupting the flow of what we're doing, right? What we're supposed to be doing is question answer time. And now we're not doing that. We're interrupting the flow of what we're supposed to be doing. So I don't like the disruption to the flow, I guess.
Can you describe what you saw in State's Exhibit 10K?
So can we have a sidebar? No.
Team leader Steve Daniels used a small, sharp instrument. And I testified that he made a slit through the black plastic. And you can see the black plastic kind of peeled away. on the top of the head. And then I testified there was a white piece of plastic underneath. And this is the white piece of plastic here. He made a slit in the white plastic. And when he did that, you can see what appeared to be brown human hair. Some of the hair kind of came out with the sharp instrument, and that's the hair you can see on top of the white plastic. But that's what you're looking at there.
Roger, what you observed in States Exhibit 10L.
Once the ERT team continued excavating, they removed all the soil on top of this small body that was wrapped in completely black plastic. I testified that it appeared to take the shape of a small body in black plastic. And this is what we saw here. It's probably a 4x2 grave, and I'm guessing at those measurements. But it started to take the shape of a small body, and then it had different pieces of duct tape throughout the black plastic on top.
What did you observe in States Exhibit 10M?
Once we lifted JJ out of the ground, there was still wet soil underneath where he was laying, and that's body decomposition. The body had begun to break down. So that's what the wet soil is through here. Again, you can see the roots that were cut to be able to put him in this location.
Mm-hmm. Talking about the bodies now. That's nice.
Detective, once that body was recovered, what did you do? To clarify that question, once that body was taken out of the ground, what did you do?
I assisted the coroner and a few other officers in placing JJ in a body bag, black body bag. The coroner locked the body bag for evidence. We then put it in the back of the coroner's vehicle. The coroner and a Fremont County deputy drove the
Thank you, GSD Dog Mom, for the 10 gift memberships. They are extensively appreciated. Thank you very much for your support of the channel.
JJ was placed in the morgue.
I appreciate everyone who helps to contribute to this project. Thank you.
The Daybell residence.
Do you recall who the Fremont County coroner was?
Brenda Dye.
And do you recall what other officers traveled with you to the hospital?
In my vehicle was just Lieutenant Ron Ball. With the coroner, Brenda Dye, I believe it was Detective Kaiserman.
And just for clarification, you have said this already, I apologize, but what hospital did you take them to?
Madison Memorial Hospital.
And where is that located?
In the city of Rexburg.
Once you finished that task, what was the next step for your investigation method?
We returned back to the Daybell residence. As we got there, we were told that they had possibly...
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. There's some hearsay.
I'll ask another question. Without telling the jury what anyone told you, what did you do when you got back to the residence?
We assisted in a second burial site.
And when you got back to the residence, did you observe another burial site being looked at?
I did.
Where was that located?
So through the course of our investigation, we learned that the Daybell family had deemed a section of the backyard as what they referred to as a pet cemetery. And we knew through talking to family members that the pet cemetery had a little black dog statue next to a post that kind of signified where the pet cemetery was. And so when I returned back from dropping JJ off at the morgue, I observed ERT digging in the pet cemetery area.
And did you aid in that excavation?
I did.
What did you personally do?
ERT began taking off top layers of soil in this specific area in the pet cemetery. Once they began to again see wet soil start to protrude through the dry soil, they slowed down, and we got on our hands and knees and began excavating that by hand.
And by hand, did you use tools to do that?
We did. They had small tools that we could use, trowels, like paintbrushes, things of that nature.
Approximately what time of day was this?
Say it was afternoon.
And approximately how many people were there with you using hand tools?
There was only a few of us at a time that could work because of the area, but also because of the smell. We had to take turns digging because we were on our hands and knees, and the smell was so bad that we could only work for a few minutes before somebody else had to take turns, get on their hands and knees, and start digging by hand.
And you said the smell. What did it smell like?
Decomposing body.
How long did you aid in that excavation using the hand tools?
Hours, probably hours.
And did you find anything?
We did. We ended up digging down and started to uncover burnt pieces of flesh, charred bone, fatty tissue, just, and I apologize for the lack of better words, but globs of burnt flesh starting to protrude through the dirt.
And once you found that, how long did you keep working that site that day?
We worked probably until probably 4-ish in the afternoon.
And you mentioned ERT. Were they working there alongside you?
They were. There was also other areas being excavated as well. The fire pit still. So everybody was kind of tasked with something different at that point. And once we started getting down a little bit more in Tylee's burial site, we assumed it was Tylee, we could start to see the top of what appeared to be something plastic and green. And at that point, the ERT team leader, Steve Daniels, decided we were done for the evening.
When you were done for the evening, what happened?
We had Fremont County Sheriff's Office, the Madison County Fire Department, bring in two large light trucks to illuminate the crime scene. The crime scene was taped off. We had officers from Rexburg City Police, deputies from Fremont County Sheriff's Office that remained on scene all night long, walking the perimeter to make sure that the scene wasn't compromised. And it was well illuminated.
And did you return the next day?
Yes, we did.
And when you returned the next day, who else returned?
Everybody that was there the previous day.
So ERT came back,
That's correct, yes.
and other members of the FBI,
Yes,
Fremont County officers,
yes.
Rexburg police officers.
Correct.
And I believe you testified earlier that there were some Attorney General investigators there as well.
Yes,
And they were all there that second day.
that's correct.
Approximately what time did you arrive that second day?
We started fairly early. It was approximately 7 in the morning.
And what did you start doing when you got there on the second day?
I went back to Tylee's burial site. We had put up canopies to keep sunlight and wind. There was media, helicopters flying overhead, so we wanted to keep the scene from being compromised as much as we possibly could. And at that point, we got back down on our hands and knees and began digging again with those same little tools to get down to see what exactly we were going to take out of the ground at that point.
All right. And so and then what happened next? Did you continue to do that work?
Like I said, we would take turns digging because the smell was so bad. And we would just keep excavating slowly around this green object that started to come through the dirt the first day. So it started to take a shape, a roundish shape, when we began digging down and methodically removing dirt. And at that point, we could start to see what appeared to be the shape of a green melted bucket that appeared to have the remains of, we assume, were Tylee that were charred and burned inside it.
And were you there for the excavation of that bucket?
Yes.
How did that happen?
Once we got down to what we thought was the bottom of the disformed bucket, we observed part of a human skull underneath the bucket. There was some teeth that we ended up excavating from underneath. At that point, the goal was to lift that out of the ground. And so there was we made kind of a little hole around it to try to get underneath. So we put the tarps out. Like I said, the goal was to try to lift it completely out without manipulating it in any way. But when we tried to do that, when we lifted it, it all broke apart because there was nothing holding it together. So at that point, we had to go back in and remove all the pieces of the charred flesh and burnt bone and organs and pieces of Tylee that put onto the tarp.
And while you were doing that, you talked about the smell on you. Was that still present?
Yes, very much so. Strong odor, yes.
Were you able to observe the, lack of a better word, total removal of that green bucket and its contents from that excavation site?
We were able to lift everything out at that point. We put it on the blue chart. There were photographs taken, measurements taken by ERT. Once that was completed, we dug down even further to make sure we didn't miss anything. Once we figured out everything was out of the ground, that tar, the nose, and Tylee's remains were then put into a body bag. In the coroner again walked the body bag for evidence purposes. And Tylee was also transported to the morgue.
And did you follow along when Tylee was transferred to the morgue like you did in JJ?
We did. We followed in the same manner. Myself and Lieutenant Ball. Once Tylee was placed in the morgue, we returned back to the Daybell residence.
Good morning, Monica.
Your Honor, I'm going to be asked that the witness be handed State's Exhibits 11A through 11G.
And Judge, for the record, I've previously reviewed these and I would object to admission of these as exhibits.
All right, exhibits 11A through 11G are admitted without objection. This time, as we get into this evidence, I'm going to announce that because of the graphic nature of some of this evidence, I'm not going to be showing this on the court's live stream, nor to the general public in the courtroom. The jurors will be viewing the evidence as well as the parties are permitted to see that. In addition, the court will provide an opportunity for any victims that wish to see the evidence in a private setting to view it as it's now been admitted into the record. But we made arrangements to not display this to the general public. And so, Mr. Wood, with these exhibits, that's how we'll proceed. And we will not include that on the live stream, but you can discuss it on the record in open public with the witness.
Senator, can you review that exhibit, those exhibits? And Your Honor, I understand these are already admitted. I am still ask a few foundational questions just to establish knowledge.
Very well, for the record.
Detective, what does State's Exhibit 11 report to be? And its subparts?
Photograph of Pet Cemetery and photographs of Tylee as we took her out of the ground in her burial site.
And were these photographs taken on June 9 and 10?
That's correct, yes.
And were you on the scene that day when those photographs were taken?
Yes,
And are they true and accurate representations of what you saw?
yes.
Your Honor, those exhibits having been admitted, I'd ask to publish.
Images of
Detective, before I publish that, I'm going to place State's Exhibit 10A up again. And can you point to the general location of what you've described as the pet cemetery?
Right here.
So Rick, can you have on the record and explain where it's pointing?
Yes, yeah, Detective, will you explain where you're pointing?
It's just east of this shop area and just north of the fire pit. So it's right through here.
And Your Honor, I do think that the state's first picture under State's Exhibit 11 is okay for public consumption.
It is. I just wanted to make sure our system was working as well, that Exhibit 11A is fine.
Detective, what did you observe in State's Exhibit 11A?
This is where we began excavating briefly. As you can see in this photograph, there's a small black dog statue next to the post. So that's where we had learned this was the pet cemetery area through talking to family members. And then there's just some tarps laid out for some of the soil. You can see in the back the markers that had been distinguished and laid out by ERT for the fire pit area that I had talked about earlier.
And Your Honor, I think at this point it's appropriate to turn to public access.
I agree.
Detective, Your Honor, I'm at a bit of a, I have no idea if this is, I can't see if this, well, I'll ask Detective, can you see that image in your monitor?
Yes,
Can you see most of it?
yes.
Can you describe for the jury what's been marked as State's Exhibit 11B? What did you observe there?
Can I see? Is there a way I can use the pointer?
I have a suggestion also, Mr. Wood, just because I understand what you're doing to try to line that up since you can't see the monitor. Do you want to set a notepad or something on there and get it oriented, and you could set on top of that just so that it's lined up?
And if I could have the screen for 1 moment, thank you. You remember that suggestion? Okay. Detective, what did you observe in State's Exhibit 11B?
It's hard to describe that pointer, but I'll do my best. In the middle of that photograph, you can start to see the different color and the changes in the soil from dry to a wet, moist dirt. You can start to see to the left just a little bit of that area. You can see the white piece sticking out and it's burnt on top, and that's charred bone that's starting to stick out, and all the little pieces next to it are pieces of burnt flesh, tissue, or we later determined were organs that were all kind of, that's the top of what was inside the bucket. So that's what we first started to see when we started to excavate.
And at this point, were you still using the hand tools?
Yes.
you explain for the jury what you observed in State's Exhibit 11C.
So as we started to excavate down further, some of the top of the mass of burnt flesh wasn't really attached to anything. And so when we would start to dig away towards the sides, it would kind of come apart. It wasn't part of that original mass. And so what you're looking at on this blue tarp is burnt flesh still attached to some bone. The upper left part of that section that you're looking at is part of the hip bone that still has burnt flesh attached to it, and then dirt and just fatty burn tissue.
You described for the jury what you observed in State's Exhibit 11D.
So when I talked about it started to take a roundish shape, this is what I'm referring to. And we dug around the sides of it, trying to get to the bottom, because like I said, the goal was to get underneath, have 3 or 4 guys in there and just lift it onto the tarp. So that's what you're looking at in this photograph, is just the burnt flesh that's still just kind of inside that hook.
And Judge, could we approach for a sidebar, please?
Yes.
I mean, we're getting to the bodies we found in the ground, and so that's pretty intense. Yeah. So, I mean, this detective can kind of walk you through, and has walked us through, the initial investigation, how this started as a welfare check based on the grandmother's report, the seeming disinterest of the parents at best, the mother's order to produce the children, which didn't happen, the fact that the parents went to Hawaii while the children were missing, the investigation that was done there, and now we're getting into we found the bodies in the ground stage of the thing, and going through that. So kind of intense. This detective is kind of walking you through, at this point, kind of the timeline of the case in a lot of ways. So, fair enough. Of course, those of you who turn down your volume will miss out on my joyous commentary, which is, problematic. And probably for the best that we're not seeing the more intense photographs of the children in their semi-decayed state. Larry's there? DUI guy's there? If DUI guy's there, we should have him on stream later. So that'd be cool. See what his impressions were.
And that's part of a human skull just to the right of that, the green bucket.
Oh, apologize.
There were teeth.
Kay's
There in
husband.
the
Never
dirt
mind.
as well. But that's what you're looking at, it's just a close-up of the bottom of it.
Exactly what you explained for the jury what you observed in State's Exhibit 11 as.
So once we removed that mass, and put it on the blue tarp, there was still some wet soil underneath. So we dug down even further to make sure that we had excavated everything we needed. And so what you're looking at, you can see the tarps in the background we had put up. You can see some of the hand tools that we used just to the right of that hole. But that's what you're looking at, is just after we got that mass out, the wet soil.
Detective, what did you observe in State's Exhibit 11G?
So these were part of Tylee that kind of broke apart when we tried to lift it out of the ground. There's pieces of charred bone. There's parts of a skull on the bottom left, covered in dirt, and there's still burnt, rotting flesh still attached to the bone. So that's what you're looking at that one. These were the pieces that broke off.
Detective, I believe you testified that you assisted in transferring those remains to Madison County to the hospital, correct?
Correct, I followed behind in the corner.
Was Lieutenant Ball with you again?
He was.
Once you got up to the hospital, what did you do?
We observed the Fremont County coroner, Brenda Dye, transfer Tylee's remains into the morgue. The morgue was unlocked, but there was evidence they put up. And at that point, myself and Lieutenant Ball went back to the defendant Daybell's residence.
And what did you do once you got back there?
We assisted and made sure there were no other burial sites or anything that the ERT team needed assistance with. At that point, we decided that we were going to take JJ and Tylee to the Ada County Coroner's Office to have an autopsy performed. So roughly 4 in the afternoon on June 10th, 2020, it was decided that we were going to follow the county coroner with the remains of JJ and Tylee to the Ada County Coroner's Office for an autopsy the next morning.
And when did you arrive in Ada County, approximately?
Approximately 8 or 9 in the evening on June 10th.
And what did you do once you got there?
We went directly to the coroner's office, and JJ and Tylee were dropped off, and the coroner's office took custody of both JJ and Tylee.
So that was like later in the evening.
Correct.
And was an autopsy performed that night?
No.
When was the autopsy?
The
Judge, I'm going to object. There needs to be some foundation.
Overruled, if you know, you can answer.
The autopsy was performed June 11th, early morning hours.
Well, that was the next day.
Correct.
And were you present for that?
Yes, I was.
And where did that autopsy take place?
At the Ada County Coroner's Office.
So when you arrived at the coroner's office, what did you do first?
Initially, when we arrived, we had a little debrief with the medical examiner, Garth Warren. He told us what he expected.
Judge, objection.
Grounds,
Hearsay?
Grounds.
sustained.
You met with Dr. Ward.
Correct.
What was the purpose of that meeting?
To debrief us on what to expect that morning.
What did you do next?
We went to the room where the autopsy was performed. Put the sanitary booties on our shoes, signed in on a whiteboard with our name and cell phone numbers. So we had a record of everybody that was in the room. And at that point, we stood back against the wall and observed the autopsy.
Now, as a detective, you don't perform an autopsy, correct?
Correct.
But you were able to see it take place.
That's correct.
And what did you observe happening during that autopsy?
One of his team members brought out the body bag. And I recognized it to be the same body bag that we took from defendant Daybell's backyard that day because it still had dirt on it. It still had the same lock. And at that point, they opened the body bag and revealed the same black plastic and small body that appeared to be in the black plastic.
And then what did you observe?
Dr. Warren and his team cut down the middle of the black plastic to open up what was inside. At that time, I observed a small child with duct tape on his head from his chin to his forehead area, tightly wrapped around his head. He had red pajama pants on, red pajama shirt. He had his arms folded this way across his body. And there was duct tape from elbow all the way around to his other elbow. He had his ankles also bound with duct tape. He was still wearing his nighttime pull-up diaper. He had black socks with the word Skechers in orange. I could tell that he was going through various states of decomposition based on the skin color.
Judge, I'm going to object.
Grounds.
He doesn't have the experience to make a determination about the levels of decomposition. He's speculating.
I'll sustain the objection and start the final part of the answer about decomposition, Mr. Wilkie.
All right. Detective, what did the body's skin look like?
The skin was sloughing. It appeared to be bluish green, black, yellow. And through my training experience, going through and handling different dead bodies at different stages of decomposition, that's what I recommend.
Judge, I'm going to object again. There's been no foundation for him to make that sort of medical assessment. He's not a medical doctor.
Your Honor, my argument would be that's not a medical assessment. It makes it on his training experience.
I'll overrule the objection. If like to cross further, you'll have a chance, Mr. Pryor. The objections overruled the foundation laid in the previous response.
Detective, once this, the body was taken out of the bag and you made the observations that you've just described, what happened next?
Dr. Warren and his team then cut the white plastic that was wrapped around his head and duct taped. They cut down the middle to reveal what was underneath. And at that point, I observed another piece of duct tape stretched from JJ's jawline to jawline over his mouth. He also cut the several layers of duct tape from his arms, and it revealed some more duct tape that had his wrist bound underneath all those layers of duct tape. He then took his bottom pajamas off and shirt, and it also revealed the nighttime pull-up diaper he was still wearing.
Now, Detective, you spoke about the duct tape and bag over the head, correct?
Correct.
And you've been referring to this as JJ.
Yes.
Until that duct tape and bag were removed, though, were you able to identify him as JJ?
No. Once they removed the duct tape in the bag, through looking at all the photographs for the last 8 months of JJ, I recognized him to be the same little boy laying on that table as JJ Vallow. He had the same hairstyle, shorter on the sides, longer on top. At that point, I recognized him as JJ.
Once the clothing was removed, what did you observe happen next?
Dr. Warren pointed out some bruising on his arms, on his ankles, on his chest. He also pointed out some scratch marks on the left side of his neck, just under the duct tape. At that point, Dr. Warren and his team performed the autopsy.
Your Honor, I'd ask that the witness be shown on State's Exhibits 12A through 12B.
A through B.
E.
B, thank you.
Don't bury bodies in your own yard is a pretty good tip here, by the way, just in case we needed to point out the obvious. Probably not the best place to hide the bodies in your own yard. You know? Yeah.
Detective, can you review those exhibits? Let me know when you've had a chance to.
Good.
Do you recognize State's Exhibits 12A through E?
Yes.
What do they purport to be?
JJ Vallow laying on the table after they opened the black plastic.
And were you present when those pictures were taken?
Yes.
You were in the same
Right.
Are those true and accurate representations of what you observed that day?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd ask that State's Exhibits 12A through E entered into evidence.
No objection, Judge.
Very well. 12A through E are admitted. All of these are graphic in nature, will not be published or shown on the court's live feed or to the public in the courtroom. They'll be published to the jurors, however you wish to split.
Thank you. Detective, can you describe to the jury what you observed in State's Exhibit 12A?
Once they removed the black plastic that J.J. Vallow was in, this is the first thing you saw. You can see on the white plastic on top of his head. That's the slit that was made when his head was sticking out of the ground. You can see the duct tape I testified to wrapped around his entire face. His red pajamas are still soaked with body decomposition. The level of duct tape on his arms is what really caught my attention. And he still has a white and blue child blanket wrapped around him.
Can you describe to the jury what you observed in State's Exhibit 12B?
This is the JJ's legs, his bottom half, he has his red pajama pants on still. His ankles, like I testified, are wrapped with duct tape. Those are his black Skechers socks that he had on. It's hard to see there too, but his legs and body are also soaked with decompositions.
Can you describe to the jury what you saw in State's Exhibit 12C?
When I spoke earlier that Dr. Warren cut down the white plastic in the duct tape that was covering his head, this is what we saw. You can see the other layer of duct tape around his mouth that went from jawline to jawline. You can see his hair, brown hair still was matted down to his head, wet, so with body decomposition. But at that point, I was able to still recognize him as J.J. Vallow.
You observed in 12D.
That's the white bag that was covering his head. That looks like blood in the bag. It's actually body decomposition, just breaking down. It appeared to be a normal trash bag. It had a red drawstring. And you can see, if you look close at the waffle style pattern, the expandable type trash bag. There's still pieces of duct tape that are attached. That's what that photograph depicts.
Can you describe to the jury what you saw in 12B?
That's just another photo of JJ. The tape is starting to lose its stickiness because of the way the body is.
Good. That's great.
It's just a different photo or a different angle of JJ's face.
So can I have a recite, Council? bit earlier than normal, but we are going to take a mid-morning recess at this time. We'll reconvene here about slightly before 10:30 to get started with additional testimony.
All rise, please.
All right, intense stuff, baby. Intense things for sure.
Gentlemen, you are not allowed to court status. Please exit courtroom.
Okay. Well, the court is on break. And yeah, this witness is the state certainly has thought this through in sort of how to present the evidence, and this is a pretty outstanding way to start the evidence in a way that highlights the entire sort of timeline of the case in a very comprehensive way. I also appreciate the state's pacing on the whole as they're going through this witness and sort of how they're going through the timeline. Nothing feels particularly rushed, nor does it feel particularly lingered. It feels like things are happening at the appropriate pace and sort of going through the timeline of how this investigation unfolded in its various components. And this detective was there for basically all of it, including by at least partially going to Hawaii himself to assist as part of that part of the investigation process at a time when the kids were still missing. So he was there kind of for the entire thing. And he was there when the bodies were discovered in their state with the duct tape and the state of decomposition in the plastic wrap, and has now been testifying for a little while about the state of the bodies as they were being examined by the medical examiner's office, and going through that in a bit of detail. And the state has very effectively over the last day, stretching into today, painted a picture in a very sort of comprehensible way. It provides a nice framework. I assume this is where we're trying to go with this. I mean, I don't know, but I would guess. I assume this witness is here to provide a framework by which other pieces of testimony can be added onto. So I think the point of this witness is to give an overall theory of the case, and then have other witnesses who will come testify about the parts of the case from which they would have better expertise. For example, the medical examiner, to talk about what they can talk about, or other elements of the case from which other people might be more detailed in their knowledge. So this witness, it seems, is here to provide an overall structure to give first of all, to give the jury a comprehensive understanding of the case, which is always good, especially if we're going to be here for 10 weeks. You know, you need to give them something to work with so they understand what the hell we're talking about. And also to give themselves a framework from which to use as a launch board by which they can attach other witnesses to fill in and amplify parts of the detective's testimony as appropriate. So I think this witness has been very good, and I think the state's handling of the witness has been very good. It also doesn't seem, although we can't see the pictures, but it doesn't seem like the state is unduly focusing on the gruesome, which can also be a problem, by the way, legally, of course. You're allowed to present the evidence of the case, but you have to be careful not to inflame the jury. And a lot of that would have been taken care of course, in motions in limine to reduce the amount and frequency of graphic evidence. But it's something you also have to be careful of just generally. And it seems like the state has done, at least based on the oral descriptions of what they're just talking about, it doesn't seem unduly lingering. So I think that they've done a very good job with this witness so far. The defendant's matter-of-fact style, apologize, not the defendant's, the witness's matter-of-fact style also can come off as a bit professional, perhaps, which also helps to reduce, to some degree, the emotionality of it. Because again, you want to not unduly inflame the jury. You know, you want them to hear the things and you want them to see the things, but you don't want to inflame them. So that's part of the tactics that we're trying to do. I agree with Trish in chat that Potter is trying to do his best to object where he can and trying to do the best he can by his client. But, you know, yeah, it's not really going to go anywhere. It's like this witness can't testify about the various stages of decomposition. I guess, but I'm sure we'll hear more about it from the medical examiner later. Plus, he does have some training and experience. It's not his first dead body, so he does have some knowledge. He may not be an expert, but he knows some things. He's been around a little while. Yeah. The MA will bring in some more of the evidence with respect to graphic. That's true, more of the autopsy photos, or at least discuss, maybe not even more photos, although that's possible too, but discuss the photos in increased detail. Because this guy is a police officer. He's experienced. He's seen a dead body or two, so he knows a little bit what decomposition looks like from his experience and training. But of course, a medical examiner is going to be more knowledgeable. So the medical examiner will come in to both validate the detective and to amplify and extend the detective's remarks. So on the whole, I think things are going very well for the state. Of course, we haven't heard any cross-examination from the defense lawyer yet, nor do I think we're going to anywhere in the immediate future, but we'll see. You know, it feels like we still have some more narrative to unfold. Yeah. So, on the whole, things are good. Can I answer any questions, or would you like to comment yourselves? I'm not sure you want to cross-examine this guy. Yeah, I mean, I certainly haven't thought it through about how I'd go about trying to cross-examine this guy. Not cross-examining the guy, of course, is an option that you can consider as appropriate. The jurors from Lori's trial were offered and accepted therapy after the trial. Fair. Verdict is back. The jury's back. It's a little early for that. But that's funny. I appreciate any sort of comedy we can find in this. I was telling a few jokes earlier when they were earlier into we found the bodies and stuff. But I was having trouble making comedic jokes as we got into the more details of the autopsy. So I tried a few lighthearted comments, and then it got a little bit difficult to make the lighthearted comments. So I appreciate the joviality. You think Pryor will come in hot for the cross-exam? You have to be careful. You know? Yeah, timing is everything in comedy. That's fair. Excuse me. Verdict for the Apple River trial? Oh, okay. Well, noted. I haven't been following it, so I have nothing to say about it. Congrats on 129,000. Thank you. I've been at 129,000 for a little while, but I do appreciate the nice compliment. Thank you very much, Cat Lady. That's very nice of you. hopefully we'll grow some more. That'd be nice. Hopefully we can offer the best quality coverage when it comes to the Daybell trial. The people have their choice of venues, and hopefully we can provide something of value so people will tune in here. And we do appreciate the 250 of you who are here at the moment. Thank you for joining me. Tell your friends. Yeah, if you can poke holes into the experts, then finding places to poke holes would be good, if you can find them. How about a gift giveaway? Now, the channel is not bringing in an incredible amount of revenue, so my budget is somewhat limited, but I appreciate you being here. JPC gifts 20 gift memberships. Thank you very much for your contribution. Some YouTube channels break in money. This is not one of them. We are doing okay. But well, yeah. It would really be helpful if we could at least triple the income of the channel, so I could kind of get back to my old salary. Yeah. You appreciate your perspective. You have a brilliant mind. Thank you. I do my best. I was writing a little bit as well. I don't know if you saw me, but I was writing a little bit as well, working on this cert petition. I'm going back and doing more case law research, trying to find more reasons for the Supreme Court to take this case. Oh, you meant you for gift giving? Ah, well, either way, I appreciate it. Yeah. I was thinking of like trying to shift into more like Nate the Lawyer's format, because Nate the Lawyer is making quite a lot more money than me. And so it's working for him. I was thinking maybe I'll try to do something more like he's doing. Nate the Lawyer has suggested that I should do more like police interactions gone wrong videos, because that's been a thing that's been valuable for me in the past, especially where I can criticize the police for doing a bad. So maybe I'll do more videos along that line for my own channel. I'm not talking about what the Supreme Court case is about right now. I'm not talking about it publicly till I file. When I file, I'll let you know. With a little bit of luck, I'll file within the end of May. Probably is my target to file. Would chat like to hear the history and application cases that deal with how we interact with the police? Yeah, maybe. That might be interesting. That reminds me, when do I have to do like my next set of videos for Attorneys React? So I think I have to do them pretty soon. Nate finds quirky items in the news, which is good. Yeah, he has a better eye than I do. Like, every time he posts a video, it seems obvious in retrospect that that was a good idea for a video, but for the life of me, I can very rarely spot them in advance. So, I'm not sure what that's about, but yeah, he has a good eye for spotting it. It's like, oh, okay, that was a good idea. Oh, I have videos due today, theoretically. Okay. So after the stream today, I have to do some videos. Okay, cool. So we'll have a stream tonight where we'll do that tonight. Should we read from some of the book while we're waiting? Since apparently we're on a long break. All right, for those of you who may not know, we are continuing our reading of one of Chad Daybell's books. The defendant in the case, Chad Daybell, wrote, among other books, he wrote a Left Behind series clone from a Mormon perspective. When we last left the action, the Mormon Church was saying that the end times were near. And they had called their people to the hills, to church-owned property in preparation for the end times. Also, our protagonist, Tad, got the chip, a government-funded program that puts a chip in your hand, the mark of the beast, some might say, and he has at least temporarily split from his wife. His wife is in the camps with the good Mormons, and he is not, thinking the whole thing is a over-exaggeration. We pick up in chapter 11. In Guatemala, the miracle of the saints gathering before the hurricane hit became more evident as the days went on. The women and children remained on the temple grounds as the men returned to their homes to assess damage. They all universally report the same thing. Their homes had either been severely damaged or were gone, and many of their neighbors had been killed. There were so many people killed throughout Gargo that their bodies were wrapped in sheets and taken to public parks. But the heat and humidity that followed the storm was causing rapid decay of the bodies, and city officials were soon forced to dig mass graves that were filled with thousands of bodies. Targo would never be the same. The city had been devastated by the hurricane, and the citizens began to call it the City of Death. Within days, a good portion of the non-LDS citizens had already left the area. Many citizens had struggled to find work and housing even before the hurricane, and now that the city was a disaster area, they desperately wanted to try somewhere else. There wasn't any gasoline available for cars or buses, but that didn't stop them. The roads out of Quetzaltenango were clogged day and night as people headed on foot to either Guatemala City or Mexico, hoping to start a better life. Meanwhile, the saints began repairing many of the buildings near the temple site, and an LDS community began to form around the temple. Josh had originally wondered whether he should officially release his missionaries and let them return to his families, but he didn't feel prompted to do so. They were working hard and helping out in so many ways. Josh also sensed that the Lord wanted them to be part of the upcoming events that Elder Smith had said this group would experience. Besides, the missionaries were all having a blast. They spent their work days patching up the temple windows and helping to work on surrounding buildings. Despite the disaster, a true spirit of unity could be felt among the missionaries, and Kim admitted that she had never felt happier. One day, while Josh was visiting a stake that was living in a far corner of the temple grounds, he was approached by a man who appeared to be in his late 20s. He had toned skin like most other Guatemalans, but Josh couldn't help noticing his light brown hair and strikingly blue eyes. Where's this going? The man took off his work gloves and stuck out his hand. Elder Brown, it's nice to finally meet you. I've heard many great things about you. Josh smiled at the man. I'm glad to meet you too. What is your name? I'm Brother Mathony. I grew up in this area and I thought I'd give you a hand if you need it. I appreciate the offer, Josh said. Have you been a member of the church for a while? Brother Mathony nodded. My family and I were among the first to accept Christ's teachings. That's great, Josh said. Since so many of the members are recent converts, it's nice to meet someone who has more experience with the church. Brother Mathony pointed to a nearby group. I'm helping this ward to get organized, but don't hesitate to help find me if you need anything. Thank you. I will certainly keep that in mind. They shook hands again, and Brother Mathony stared right into Josh's eyes. It was almost unnerving. As Josh watched Brother Mathony walk happily away, he said to himself, there's definitely something unique about that guy. 3 weeks after the hurricane's arrival, very few people remained in Quetzaltenango other than the saints. On that day, mountains on opposite ends of the valley began to smoke. Small earthquakes were felt, and then Santa Maria, the mountain to the south that towered above the main road to Guatemala City, erupted in a spectacular explosion. Volcanic ash shot into the sky, but thankfully it drifted away from Quetzaltenango. Josh sent a group of elders to check on the road and reported that the canyon was closed off by a thick river of mud and ash. 3 days later, other mountains to the northeast erupted on a smaller scale, putting 20 feet of rubble throughout the bottom of the canyon. The people weren't completely trapped, but no one could get in or out of the valley without taking winding roads through backcountry, and very few people were willing to do that. So the valley was essentially sealed from the outside world. As reports came in, Josh felt a bit discouraged. He asked Kim, "Sheesh, can't Mother Nature give us a break?" But she was more thoughtful. Maybe it's a way to protect us. I'm sure the Lord has hands in it. Thus ends chapter 11. In Guatemala, apparently, after being hit by a hurricane, which, reminder, was not set to hit Guatemala in the book. It was supposed to hit Mexico, but took an unexpected turn and hit Guatemala with very strong force. Apparently, also now, the volcanoes are erupting in Guatemala. Okay, well, that's something that's happening. Let us proceed on to chapter 12. We're back in the United States. Back at the Jolly Ranch campground, things were going as well as they could be expected. Families were getting accustomed to living in their tents and eating meals as a group. The campground itself covered several dozen acres in the bottom of the canyon, and so there was room for everyone. Every ward had set up the tents in assigned parts of the campground, and life proceeded normally. Yeah, we kind of gave up on pronouncing the town in Guatemala. I pronounce it differently every time. Of course, as often happens in such situations, a few families have been chronic complainers from the start. One lady complained about having to live in a tent when she had a perfectly good 20-foot-long trailer sitting in her driveway at home. Another problem was that several teenagers and children were struggling to cope without cell phones, laptops, iPods, and the latest high-tech video games. A few of the kids had smuggled these items onto a bus, and a couple of teenage girls had been calling their friends down in Springsville. This caused a bit of an uproar, and all electronic equipment was confiscated. President Johnson, by the way, that's the president of the Mormon Church, not the president of the United States. President Johnson called an emergency meeting and explained that the camp they intended to live in a way that doesn't allow distinctions between rich and poor. We're all starting out fresh, he told the group. We don't care if you made $1 million a year or if you're on welfare. The Mormons are communists? The important thing is we're all united in our purpose to become more Christ-like. That's why we all live in tents. It would create an imbalance if the Mormons are communists? Okay. That's why we all live in tents. It would create an imbalance if some people had their trailers and RVs while other people lived in pup tents. The electronic items create the same divisions. One of the fathers of the cell phone girls raised his hand. Well, we came here voluntarily. Does that mean we can leave whenever we want? President Johnson nodded, but pointed to the fence that surrounded the campground. Just be aware, though, that once you leave, you won't be welcome back. The cell phone daughter said, good. It's not like I'd ever want to come back to the stupid place. Just give me my phone back. A few other families seemed to agree with the girl, and President Johnson asked, how many of you would like to leave the camp? About 10 families raised their hand. President Johnson noted it was the same families that had been causing all the dissension. He said, you're free to leave. We will gladly return your electronic items, and you can depart whenever you want. A lady called out, so when will the bus be here? President Johnson couldn't help smiling. I'm afraid there aren't any buses scheduled to come to the campground anytime soon. You'll have to walk or hope someone passes by to give you a ride. Don't worry, though. It's only a few miles to the edge of town. That led to additional grumbling and moaning, but within an hour, that group of families had left the camp. The remaining saints were doing their best to feel sympathetic for the members who left, because the departed members didn't seem to realize they would face greater challenges back in the valley. But the saints in Medley felt relieved that the contention disappeared from the camp, and there were plenty of smiles exchanged when the complainers were finally gone. For Emma, the highlight of the camp so far had been getting to know Doug's wife, Becky, even better than before. They had always dreamed of living close to each other, and while this isn't exactly what they had planned, they formed a true sisterly bond. Is this going to turn into a three-way with Doug and Becky? Do the Mormons do a lot of three-ways? Okay. It feels like that's where we're going. One morning, Becky was feeling quite sick. Uh-oh. She threw up a couple times and finally found Emma. Can you help me with the chores today? She asked. I just can't seem to keep any food down. I'm glad to, Emma asked. Is there anything I could do for you? Becky smiled slyly. Actually, there is. Can you find me a pregnancy test? Emma chuckled as she turned to go to the medical tent. Lay down on the cot and I'll be right back. The camp had a variety of medical supplies, and Emma dug through the supply box until she found what she was looking for. She returned and handed it to Becky, who disappeared for a few minutes before rushing back excitedly into the tent. It's official, she told Emma. They hugged each other and then went to find Doug. They discovered he'd actually been searching for them. Becca, someone told me you're sick, he said, so I was going to come give you a blessing if you needed one. Yeah, Tony. Yeah, exactly. A woman throwing up is a sure sign of pregnancy. 100% accuracy in literature movies. Yeah, 100%. No, it couldn't possibly be anything else. Yeah. His wife smiled. I'm feeling a little better now, but maybe you're the one who needs a blessing. We're going to have another baby. Doug looked positively shocked. Really? How? They all had a good laugh at his comment, and then they returned to camp to share the good news with everyone else. By the end of May, the camp at Jolly Ranch had turned into a small community, equipped with all the items the saints would need. A large pavilion had been closed in with plywood on all sides and painted with white to recreate an all-purpose meeting room. During the week, it served as a dining area, and on Sundays it became the meeting house, with each ward having an assigned time for sacramental meeting throughout the day. The foresight to install a hydraulic generator in Hobble Creek the year before had already paid off. The electricity made everything so much easier at camp, from preparing meals to holding meetings in a lighted pavilion each night. Another benefit of electrical power was that the stake president could keep in contact with general authorities through the laptop computer the church had assigned to him. Each stake president and general authority throughout the world had been given a laptop computer that could receive transmissions from a satellite. This allowed leaders to access a church-owned encrypted network. Wow, that's great. That's great. These guys have their own private network with the satellites and the satellite computers. Okay, great. That provided continuous updates on church and world situations. Leaders were also able to email church headquarters, other leaders throughout the world as needed. To the rest of the world, the church had seemingly disappeared into the mountains. But in reality, the leaders were in constant contact with each other and preparing for the next phase of gathering the saints. The area presence were still fully functioning. And in a real sense, the chain of communication from the prophet down to the stake president was more efficient than ever before. For the first time being, however, most saints at the mountain camps weren't aware of the church's specific plans. They were encouraged to settle in and build new communities. Large gardens were planted, and some camps even had cows and chickens. At the Jolly Ranch camp, each ward was assigned a garden area in a nearby field. The canyon wasn't an ideal place to grow crops, but any type of fresh produce would be welcome. The stake presidency announced a friendly competition. The stake presidency announced a friendly competition to see which ward could grow the most carrots, potatoes, tomatoes, and other vegetables by the end of the summer, and the wards eagerly jumped at the chance. An existing irrigation ditch was widened from Hobble Creek to the garden area, and even small children took part in gardening by weeding their ward's portion of the field, with parents carefully watching to make sure the kids only uprooted weeds and not vegetables. For the most part, the citizens from the valley had left them alone. The camp's northern fence bordered the canyon road, and every once in a while people would drive by and yell things like, "Hey losers, get a real job." They are literally living in a commune. I'd like to know. They are literally living in a commune, and everyone is sharing work and everyone is sharing each other's things. The Mormons have gone full communist. But no one paid them any attention. One time when Emma and Leah was working at a garden plot, oh, the cord is back. Sorry. All right, that will have to conclude our reading for the moment. We all know where this is going, right? Chad has sufficiently teed this up for us. We all know where this is going, right? There's going to be some sudden thing, and the world is going to plunge into some kind of darkness, and a lot of people are going to be rushing towards the Mormon camps and be begging to get in, and won't be let in as the Mormons, celebrate their divine intervention. But the real question is, what about Tad? What about Tad? Will he be one? Maybe he will lead the groups towards the Mormon camp and try to demand entry. Maybe he will be the opposing general in this twist. Or will he himself come to the camp before it's too late? Who can say? What fate befalls Chad? I'm sorry, not Chad, Tad. The Tadinator. The hero of our eyes. Unclear. Will Tad's wife engage in a three-way with Doug and his wife? Will they go back to polygamy? Is that where this is going? Will Tad's wife bear the children of Doug? I feel like that's probably going to happen.
All rise.
You think it's too late to get some signed books by Chad Daybell? I wonder if Tad is Chad Daybell. I wonder if he is Tad.
Jury's present and account of one.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Please be seated. We're back on the record then on case CR 22211623, just included the morning recess. Detective Hermosillo is still under oath. And Mr. Wood, if you'd like to continue with your direct, you can do that at this time.
Thank you. Detective, I think when we left off, we were speaking about the autopsy of J.J. Daybell, correct?
Correct.
You had mentioned earlier that you did observe the actual, not only the body, but then the autopsy of J.J. Daybell.
That's correct.
And were you present for that entire autopsy?
Yes, I was.
And when that autopsy was concluded, what did you do?
At that time, Dr. Warren and his team removed JJ from that autopsy table. Then they brought out a second, excuse me, black body bag. And I recognized it to be the same body bag from the scene because it also had dirt. And they placed that body bag on the table.
And what did you observe next?
Dr. Warren and his team opened the body bag, looked at the remains for what was left as far as remains inside. He stated there was nothing he could do at that time with an autopsy. So
I'm going to move to strike as hearsay.
Your own statement already came through.
And I'm going to move to strike.
So
could you repeat the question?
What did you observe? What were you had just talked about the Tylee's remains being brought out. What did you observe?
Once the remains were brought out, Dr. Warren opened the bag and looked at the remains and stated there was nothing he could do at that point. So at that time, we left the autopsy room for the day.
And when you left, did you do anything in furtherance of your investigation that day?
No.
Did you return to the Ada County Coroner's office the next day?
We did. On June 12th, 2020, we went back to the Ada County Coroner's office. At that point, Lieutenant Ball took custody of some of the evidence and we transported it to the state lab in Meridian.
And were you with Lieutenant Ball when you did that?
I was, yes.
And once you took it to the state lab, what did you do?
Those items were checked into the state lab. And then that concluded what we did for that day.
Detective, you spoke earlier about some of the other agencies you've worked with in this investigation. And is it correct you worked with Fremont County?
Correct, yes.
And I believe you testified that your primary focus in this investigation was looking for Tylee and JJ. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
Was there an investigation in Fremont County at the same time that had connections to your investigation?
Yes, there was.
What was that investigation?
Fremont was investigating the death of Tammy Daybell, who was married to the defendant, Chad Daybell. Kind of the exact same time we were doing our investigation with missing children.
And would you meet with Fremont County and discuss the cases together?
Yes, we would.
And would you aid each other in those investigations?
Yes,
Would you share information?
yes.
Detective, are you aware of any event involving Tammy Daybell on October 9th, 2019?
Yes, I am.
How did you become aware of that event?
Through the course of sharing information with the Fremont County Sheriff's Office, we were advised.
Judge, could we approach?
Yes.
More approaching. All guilty for the Apple River guy. I haven't been following the case, so I really don't know much. I don't really know anything about it. I mean, you know, my attention can only be in so many places at once. So the Apple River trial was not on my radar. So I don't know. I got nothing. Approaching just to spite me. They might be approaching just to spite me. Yeah, that's fine. That's fair. What are these cameras they're using in the courtroom? I assume it's that one on the pole there that you can see. Is that like? I think I know what camera that is.
Court reporter, if we could read back Mr. Wood's previous question before the sidebar.
I think I have that on like a
I'll see
list
if
somewhere.
there's an objection held by defense.
Question, how did you become aware of that event?
Is there an objection to that, Mr. Pryor?
No, not to that question.
Okay, then Mr. Wood, just proceed with another question.
I don't think there's no objection to the question. I don't think it's been answered yet.
Okay. You can answer.
We were advised through the course of our investigation that
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. The question is whether he was advised, not what he was advised of, but whether he was advised.
Our response, Mr. Wood?
I know the camera's for the screen. I was,
No, but sure, I understand the objection.
no,
Don't as
because
well.
the camera's facing out.
You can continue with your response.
Yeah, so I think that camera that's below the screen is the one that's taking the pictures of the parties. So I'm assuming that's the camera that they're using for the other two
How did you
cameras.
become aware of the events of October 9th, 2019?
through the course of our investigation, we were aware of those events through speaking with Fremont County Sheriff's Office.
Let's see.
Why was it important to you in investigating your case to share information and receive information from Fremont County?
It was important because the
Logitech
suspects
for
in my
creators?
case were the exact same suspects in our
Could be.
case. And so we wanted to make sure that we shared information so nothing was missed. At that point, we were still looking for two small children. And so it was
Yeah.
imperative
Well, that's a
to us that
1080
we shared
HD camera, though,
information
so I'm not sure why they're not
gathered
streaming in 1080,
information
though.
from neighboring counties and anybody that was involved with this case.
And did you also confer with Arizona law enforcement?
We did, yes.
Yeah.
Were you aware of who Charles Vallow was?
Yes.
This looks like the camera they're using.
Charles Vallow was married to Lori Vallow.
Is he alive?
No, he is not.
Do you know when he died?
Charles died July 11th, 2019.
Are you aware of how he died?
Charles was shot by Alex Cox, Lori's brother.
Yeah, Logitech
Now,
Mevos.
you testified earlier.
It looks
that
like
your
the camera they're
initial
using.
involvement in this case involved looking for a Jeep.
That's right.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you testified that you were looking for that Jeep because it was requested by Arizona law enforcement.
That's correct, yes.
And are you aware of why they were looking for that Jeep?
Yes,
Why were they looking for that Jeep?
that Jeep was a suspect in an attempted homicide of Brendan Boudreaux, who was married to Lori's niece, Melanie Boudreaux. The suspect in that homicide was also Alex Cox.
Detective, going back to October 9th, 2019, Tammy Daybell, are you aware of the incident that took place with Tammy Daybell?
Yes, I am.
What was it?
Judge, I'm going to object. There's no foundation as to how he became aware of it.
Sustained.
Through your investigation, did you become aware of what happened with Tammy Daybell?
Yes, I did.
And how did you become aware of that information?
Sharing information with Fremont County.
And so was this part of the collective knowledge of the case that you were working?
That's correct, yes.
And did you aid in that investigation as well?
I did.
So you personally became aware of these events?
Correct.
Based on your knowledge and your investigation, are you aware of any event involving Tammy Daybell on October 9th, 2018?
Judge, again, there hasn't been proper foundation.
I think at this point I've established that it's through his investigation and knowledge.
This objection's overruled.
You can answer the question.
Yes, I'm aware.
And what was that event?
On October 9th, 2019, Tammy Daybell believes that she was shot at in the driveway of the defendant Daybell's residence.
And when you say shot at, are you aware of how she thought she was shot at?
She initially reported that it was possibly a paintball gun.
Detective, in your investigation, did you ever put together timelines of events that took place?
Yes, I did.
Why is it important to do that?
Just to establish who the key figures were, the key dates to aid in our investigation, so we can make sure that we share the accurate and correct information with the other agencies.
And in preparing for this trial, did you prepare any charts of key figures to aid the jury in understanding your testimony and the testimony of the trial?
Yes, I did.
And was that based on your involvement in the case
Yes,
and your investigation?
correct.
And based on I'm sorry, that wasn't very well said. Based on the information you gained from your investigation.
That's correct.
Your Honor, I'd ask that the witness be handed State's Exhibit 30.
So it's mir nicht ripe now?
Yes, definitely.
Detective, do you have State's Exhibit 30 in your hand?
Yes, I do.
What does it purport to be?
Those are the key figures that I put together as far as the investigation goes, photographs.
And did you do that to aid this jury in understanding who the people involved in this case are?
Yes,
And did you do that in anticipation of your testimony?
yes, I did.
Right. And are those, the pictures attached with those names, are those true and accurate representations of the individuals attached to those names?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, for demonstrative purposes only, the state would move to enter State's Exhibit 30 into evidence.
Any objection?
For demonstrative purposes, no.
Very well. Exhibit 30 is entered for that reason.
May I publish?
Yes.
Detective, if you can just use your pointer and just, for purposes of the record, read the names attached with each picture.
Sure. This is Lori Vallow Daybell, Charles Vallow, Alex Cox, who was Lori's brother, Chad Daybell, Tammy Daybell, his deceased wife, Tylee Ryan, who is daughter to Lori, JJ Vallow, who's a son to Lori, and Melanie Pulowski Boudreau, she was remarried, is the niece to Lori Vallow.
Now, when you say that JJ was Lori Vallow Daybell's son, was he also Charles Vallow's son?
Yes, he was.
And that was by way of adoption, correct?
That's correct.
And so Alex Cox was JJ and Tylee's uncle.
Yes.
Detective, similar to that last chart, did you prepare a timeline in anticipation of your testimony?
Yes, I did.
And did you do that based on your experience and knowledge of the case?
Yes, I did.
And it was based on information you gained through your investigation?
That's correct.
And did you do that to aid the jurors in understanding just the basic timeline of the events that happened in this case?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd ask the witness began in States Exhibit 31.
Judge, could we approach, please, for the sidebar?
Yes.
We were reading Chad Daybell's book, one of them at least. We were reading his 5-book Left Behind clone series. We were on book 1. It's enthralling. Thank you, chat, for being a good chat. I appreciate that you're here and spending time with me. Thank you for those of you who are members. It's nice to see so much green in the chat. I do appreciate those of you who are kind enough to help support me financially and keep this thing going. I haven't heard this before. I mean, there was audio available of Lori Daybell, but it was delayed audio. So some of you may have heard it before. But I thought about trying to cover it, but it just was too cumbersome with just audio. And this is much better. So, I mean, I know a lot of this from various media reports, but obviously the details to a lesser degree. And then we're having more sidebar, where apparently we're literally going to the side in order to do a sidebar, which is funny. Yeah, the audio, and the fact it was delayed, and like there was It's just, yeah, with audio only, it's just really cumbersome. So, we did what we could. What have you missed? The detective just is continuing going through the narrative. Today, he focused a lot more on discovering the bodies in the yard and taking them for autopsy, and has been describing the autopsy to some degree. Is mostly what we've been talking about so far this morning. Obfuscate, in a sense, about this trial? Well, the judge was certainly trying to obfuscate a lot of this by making so much of the record sealed. How about that? Everything's sealed. No one can see anything. That sounds like obfuscation to me. I like that. I like that, though. Vocab quiz are fun. Vocab quiz is fun. I learn new words sometimes. They're talking about something, I guess. This is kind of a strange looking courtroom. The counsel table, like being offset like that, is kind of weird. The counsel's table for the defense is offset relative to the rest of the room is kind of weird. Something about the carpeting kind of rubs me the wrong way. I think maybe it's just because it is carpeting. Yeah, there was the weird motion from some Miranda trying to inject himself into a case. That I had less problem with being sealed because I'm sure it's stupid. So the stupid, being sealed because it's dumb and we don't want to give, Troll Boy some publicity makes sense to me. Kate $99, thank you for streaming this trial and story time. You are welcome, Kate. Has there ever been a bar next to a courthouse called the Sidebar? Hell yes. Every possible legal joke has been the name of a bar next to a courthouse. The bar, the sidebar, chambers. I mean, yeah, basically every possible legal pun has been a bar name next to a bar. Yeah. Next to the courthouse. Yes.
This time, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, there's an evidentiary issue to resolve, which we are going to take up outside of the presence of the jury. We'll do that as quickly as we can. So I will be out the bench while I research this momentarily. Then we'll come back on and make a ruling.
An evidentiary issue you have to research. Okay.
All rise, please.
Courthouse bars are good. Yeah, so much for trying to have an original idea. Dude, man, come on. The legal profession has like 3 times the alcoholism rate of the general populace. So, yeah, it's been thought of. They're doing some sort of evidentiary issue. I'm not sure exactly what's happening. They're talking about some kind of evidentiary issue. There's some sort of problem with the question, and the judge wants to actually research it. It's like college towns that name a bar the library or name a bar study hall. It's been done.
Maybe see.
The judge has apparently left the bench and is now going to chambers, I guess, to do this research motion. You have a bar named next to the hospital called the Morgue. There you go. Yeah. But it seems a bar next to a hospital should just be called Rounds. I mean, that's a double pun right there. Rounds because that's an alcohol thing, and Rounds because it's also a hospital thing. What are you going to do? Oh, I'm going on Rounds. Dude, I mean, Rounds is a much better name for a hospital bar. I mean, serious. Come on. It's obvious. And then you go there and you buy a round. So you could have like a special on Rounds, right? That would be a good thing, right? So that's a thing for the bar, right? You know, buy 5 drinks, you know, buy drinks for 6 friends, get one of them for free. How about that? There you go. That would encourage people to come in with their friends. You know, you'd actually have to do the numbers. But, you know, if you know, that would be a special. Buy a round. Buy a drink for at least you and at least 5 other friends and get one free. You could do that. That'd be good. Yeah. And you could have some sort of like shot thing that's around. So you could have some number of shots, whatever the number would be, and you put them into a little circular serving thing, maybe. And so like you could order, you know, like the shots or something. That'd be good. You could have different drinks named after different specialties. Maybe you could try to figure out like what different specialties would drink. Could be fun. You could do round ice. Yeah. There's potential there, man. There's potential. You know, the orthopedic surgeons have a stereotype of being kind of jock-like. So you give them whatever the jock-like drink is. Then you could have like neurology, the really anal, uptight people who like to really flex their knowledge. You give them a drink. The radiologist, you give some sort of drink that maybe, I don't know, that you give them into a shaded glass or something. You give them into like a tinted shot glass for radiology. That'd be good. There's potential here, guys. The radiologist absinthe. Absinthe seems like that would be more like neurology. You know, it's like kind of an erudite, elitist drink. So yeah, for that seems like absinthe, or maybe what's it called? Yeah, or you give them some sort of like brandy or something, because it's like in a sniffer. Yeah, Armagnac. There you go. That's a good one for the neurologist. Armagnac. Really up your ass tight elitist brandy. Armagnac. Ooh, I love it. Although absinthe is also good because you could do especially if you do it like old school, with the whole thing with like the water with the ice in it, and you turn the thing to drip the water onto the sugar to dilute it into the absinthe. Like if you did the whole thing, that could be really good. Yeah. You give some sort of fruit punch concoction for the pediatricians. Yeah, a bar next to the airport called Flights. See, there you go. Because that's a double alcohol pun, right? Flights of alcohol, flights. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, call the thing Flights. There you go. Red wine for the phlebotomist. There you go. See, that's cool. Colonoscopy could be something like maybe like cranberry. Doesn't that have a bit of a reputation for making you go? Maybe they could have some sort of cranberry thing for the colonoscopy people. What do we give the OBGYNs? That's a good question. Champagne? Cranberry would be urology? Okay, fair enough. Prune juice. Good call. Prune juice. I like it. Yes. For colonoscopy. There you go. There you go. Yep. So I'm doing all this product development research for you for your new bar. Vodka cran for OBGYN? No, I don't know. I'm not really seeing it. Champagne, because we're always celebrating new birth. We could do some sort of champagne cocktail. That'd be fun. Yeah, do some sort of champagne cocktail for the OBGYN people. Celebrating the new birth. Mazel tov. Yeah, I like it. We're trying to decide what cocktails go with which fields of medicine for our new bar that apparently us in the chat that me and the chat are setting up. We got a new bar called Shots, which we're going to open next to a hospital, and we decided to theme our cocktails to go with different practices of medicine. So we've been spitballing ideas about what kind of cocktails go with which practices of medicine. Beer for urology, solid. Slippery nipple for OBGYN. Hey, there you go. That's a classic choice. Slippery nipple. Yeah, there you go. The black hole. We could do some sort of Black Russian, maybe, or something like that for the proctologist, because it's dark. Or a mudslide. There you go. How about that? We'll do a mudslide for the proctologists. Genius. Genius. Sex on the beach for the OB. Fair. Yeah, that's fair. I like this. A sale on White Claws for the nurses. Respect. I think we've got a good thing going, ma'am. All right, I'm just gonna need several $100,000 in venture capital, and we can get this bar started. Bloody Mary for labs. How about port for labs? That's a good one. It's kind of like a really thick red wine, kind of, essentially. So port for labs might be an interesting choice. Kiki Dawn gives 99 cents to become a non-civilian. Thank you, Kiki Dawn, for hitting that beautiful, beautiful join button. It does help to have the channel grow. I do appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. Could call it on call. Rounds just sounds better. I you know. I'm going on rounds. I'm going to rounds. Rounds. I like my idea. I think rounds. Plus, it's an alcohol pun. So it's a doctor pun and an alcohol pun, and also gives us an idea for the business, plan. We already had a buy so many drinks, get one free idea. Buy a round. We'll give you one for free if you buy enough drinks, whatever the math would be. Last words for the medical examiner. Yeah, okay, that works. Lots of potential. We could even change it up. Like, we could have a couple different ones for each profession. What does psychiatry get? What does psychiatry and psychology get? What drink implies like insanity or crazy? A Harvey Wallbanger? Absinthe for psych? Maybe. It is certainly a little strange and a little different. Kamikaze? Straight bargain bin vodka? I don't feel it. Screwball, there you go. Screwball, there you go. That works. Yeah, there you go. Screwball, there you go. Yeah. There you go. That works. Mind eraser. There you go. We can have a couple different ones. Martini. Who gets a martini? What field of medicine is martini most like? What field of medicine is a martini most like? Admin is not bad. Yeah, admin is not bad. Cardiac surgeon? That doesn't make me think of a cardiac surgeon. Martini associated with admin, though, that definitely works. Very sort of posh drink. The drink of someone who hasn't actually worked a day in recent memory. Someone who hasn't actually worked a real day in its recent memory. Admin for Martini. Yeah, I like it. Fraser, when you hear Martini, I appreciate that. Thank you, Candy Marie, for gifting 20 gift memberships. It is extensively appreciated. Thank you. Should we continue reading? Plastic surgery. Plastic surgery. What makes me think of plastic surgery? White wine? A nipple thing? Sexy nipple, a slippery nipple? Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Cosmopolitan for a plastic surgeon? Maybe. Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, okay. All right, let us continue our reading. For those of you catching up, we are currently reading Chad Daybell's book. We're in book 1 of 5 in his Left Behind series clone. When we last left the action, we were back into the United States, where the Mormons were creating a new home for themselves in the mountains, preparing for the end times. We pick up where we left off. One time when Emma and Leah were working in a garden plot that could be seen from the road, a bunch of grungy, wild-haired teenagers drove by in a Jeep and shouted, "Look at the hippies." Emma explained to Leah that hippies were people that had really long hair and rarely bathed or shaved. "Then we aren't hippies," Leah said. "They look more like hippies than we do." Emma smiled. "That's right, so don't worry about it." In many ways, everyone felt more productive than ever before. Becky, the former elementary school teacher, was named principal of the camp's school. She organized the children into classes, and Emma was among the teachers who taught the children the Gospels straight out of the scripture. They also taught the children math and history, and school lasted about 3 hours every day. At first, the children didn't want to go to school, but it soon was a favorite part of their day. While Becky was overseeing the school, Michelle and a few other grandmothers organized a preschool for the youngest children. Becky's children, Justin and Heather, really enjoyed their time with their grandma, and Becky welcomed the break. After the group of unhappy campers had left the first week, there weren't a lot of teenagers in the camp, but the ones that stayed received all kinds of training. There were several gospel scholars in the stake, and they taught the teenagers the doctrine and covenants about the wonderful prophecies that would be fulfilled in their time. Several saints had brought church reference books with them, and one of the tents was transformed into a small library where members could study. All the resources helped the youth feel a greater purpose for why they were in the camp and what awaited them. Another uplifting part of the camp involved the stake patriarch. He worked with bishops to make appointments with anyone in the camp who had never received a patriarchal blessing. And through those blessings, many testimonies were strengthened, as the patriarch was able to share with those members the important tasks that would continue in their lives. The teenagers also received plenty of temporal learnings as well. The women made sure each of the girls could cook a variety of meals and could sew any kind of clothing. Soon the young women were the ones happily preparing the night's meals rather than the women, and the food actually tasted better, although the men were smart enough not to say so. As for the boys, several of the men took turn teaching them important skills, ranging from plumbing to laying bricks, as they constructed a new building that would serve as a kitchen. Doug also spent a few days teaching them what he had learned as a physical therapist and it helped them all stay in better health and avoid pulling muscles as they worked on the projects. When Emma had packed her belongings to bring to camp, she had included her clarinet. Now that the camp was functioning well, she asked Doug, "Do you think President Johnson would approve if we turned Friday night into a social night?" "What do you mean?" "Well, maybe we could have a dance each Friday," Emma said. "I'd like to organize a little band. I've got my clarinet, and I know a few other people brought instruments too." Doug pondered the idea. "I don't see why not. When the pioneers were crossing the plains, they certainly kept up their spirits with square dances and fiddles. I think we can dance as well as they did." President Johnson really liked Emma's suggestion, and she went quickly to organizing a band. There were a couple other clarinets in the camp and 4 violins. Each of their owners were talented musicians and were eager to play again. They hiked a short distance into a nearby canyon and began practicing songs out of a church hymn book. After a couple hours, they sounded great on several hymns. "Wow, I think we can make this work," Emma told the group, "but we probably really need a few upbeat songs so that everyone isn't slow dancing all the time. Have you heard this one?" She then played a rousing number that made the group want to get up and dance. "What song is that?" one of them asked. "It sounds familiar, but I can't quite place it." Emma laughed. "It's the song the fiddlers play during the barn raising in the movie Back to the Future 3. Wow. "I think it was the band ZZ Top that performed it. You fiddlers should have a blast with that one." The group soon picked up the tune, and within a half hour, the band's version sounded better than the original. They finally took a break, laughing and out of breath. "Good job, we've had a little fun too," Emma said. "Well, I think we're ready." The first dance was the following night, and it was a smashing success. People said they hadn't had so much fun in a long time. President Johnson had such a good time that he declared they'd be holding a short devotional every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, followed by an hour of dancing before bedtime. He assigned some of the older groups to teach the groups traditional dances each week that they had learned as teenagers. The Mormons are apparently pro-dancing. Who knew? Doug had a funny idea, and he told Emma about it. She raised her eyebrows. "Do you think the stake president is going to be all right with that dance?" "He won't mind," Doug said with a smile. "The camp will never forget it. Just make sure the band learns the song." Doug was right about his idea being memorable. Never had a group of saints ever laughed so hard as Doug taught them the dance moves from Michael Jackson's Thriller. Emma could hardly blow into her clarinet because she kept cracking up. President Johnson laughed as hard as anyone, but he declared that Doug's dance was permanently banned from the camp. "I'm not banning it because of indecency, but simply to keep ourselves from being embarrassed again." Doug wholeheartedly agreed. With the saints safely tucked away in mountain camps, mainstream society began to unravel. It seemed that Satan and his followers had been unleashed in America's cities. The country's morality was already in steep decline, but within weeks, the decency standards slipped to unthinkable levels. The idea of anything goes became a prevailing attitude. That summer, a movie that was rated NC-17 was shown uncut on major broadcast networks, and pornographic movies became commonplace on basic cable stations. Wow. It became clear that the entire American culture was obsessed with sex. Some reports showed that nearly 85% of all American men had developed some form of pornography addiction, and sadly, only 10% said they felt guilty about it. The basic concepts of marriage and fidelity were openly mocked. Wow, that was fast. That was fast. Not for nothing, but the Mormons aren't the only ones who believe in marriage and fidelity, but okay. The few practicing Christians who still dared to stand up for decency were often brutally beaten, and religious buildings across the nation were burned or covered with graffiti. Holy shit. One valiant Baptist minister led a small rally on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in the nation's capital, trying to warn Congress the Lord would not always stay his hand. The preacher shouted, "We're fast approaching the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. How much longer can we expect God to spare us? We are ignoring his teachings. Our Congress no longer follows the Constitution, and our Supreme Court is making decisions that mock heaven itself. I declare that this nation has turned its back on God, and we deserve whatever biblical judgments await us. The crowd booed at the minister's word. As policemen began to close in on him, he raised his voice even higher. The many recent earthquakes across the land are signs from God, as if Earth itself is disgusted with its inhabitants. Mount Vesuvius once covered the sins of Pompeii with fire and brimstone. Can we expect anything less? At that point, the preacher was knocked to the ground by 2 policemen who kicked him in the head. Other bystanders kicked the minister in the ribs and spit on him before the policemen finally dragged him away to a van where they permanently put a stop to his preaching. The newspaper the next morning had a small headline buried deep in the metro section that read, Baptist minister dies while resisting arrest. Unfortunately for America, that minister had been right. With such wickedness spreading across the land, the Lord wouldn't stay his hand much longer. End chapter 12. Wow, that went to hell. I mean, very literally, that went to hell real fast. I mean, real fast. I mean, when the Mormons went to the mountains, according to Chad Daybell, our illustrious author, society was humming along relatively normally. And apparently within a few weeks of the Mormons being held up in the mountains, the United States has turned into a complete satanic wasteland. I mean, wow, that's a lot, man. That is a lot. Shit. No word of Tad, though. No, the Mormons are dancing. That's okay. The Mormons are dancing. The non-Mormons are engaged in NC-17 broadcast movies on broadcast television. Well, strictly speaking, they said cable television, and degeneracy and all the rest of it. Okay. Chapter 13. Ooh, we get to learn more about Tad. I'm excited. I'm excited. It was now June, and Tad still hadn't been to Springfield since the fateful day a month earlier. It was in a month? It was within a month? I thought it was more time than that. It was literally a month. Really? So the Mormons start going up to the mountains because they think the end times, and within a month, the entire United States has gone strictly to hell. I mean, wow, that was fast. Is the judge coming back? I don't know who's coming back or what. Something's happening. The judge isn't anywhere to be seen. I guess the judge is coming back in. I don't know. All right, so chapter 13, we'll have to wait. We'll have to learn a little bit more about Tad and how he's handling this whole thing.
Thank you. Please be seated.
What you got for us, Judge?
All right, we are back on the record on CR 2221-1623. We are going to take up the objection outside of the presence of the jury as it relates to the state's proposed exhibit, in this case, particularly state's proposed exhibit 31. And the court had to go back and review some prior rulings in the case that occurred some time ago. I've done that now, so what I'd like to go through is the proffer and determination if there's still a objection to the exhibit and make a ruling on that outside of the jury's presence. So Mr. Wood has offered exhibit 31, which is a timeline, and Mr. Pryor, does the defense maintain an objection to the admission of that timeline?
Judge, I spoke with Ms. Blake.
I spoke with Ms. Blake, and procedurally, I think at the time that the 404B was filed by the state, we were also dealing with the severance issue, is what I recall. And then she discussed that with me. So I think I may have made a non-objection to the 404B. And I think I made a record of that when Mr. Thomas and Mr. Archibald were objecting to that. So I may forego my objection because I think my recollection is I don't have a record of it, Judge, which is a little unusual, but I think I may have noted on the record to the court that I'm not objecting to the introduction of the 404B evidence.
All right, I understand. I think there was lodged an objection back February 14th of 2023 by you to the 404B motion. Is the state having clarification on that, Mr. Wood?
Your Honor, just based on recollection, I believe it was not an objection to all of the state's intended 404B, but to some of it. And my recollection, and I'm not looking at any document, this is just my recollection, was that the defendant did stipulate to some of the
404B's character evidence,
including issues dealing with Charles Vallow and Brandon.
404B is character evidence.
That's my recollection.
And Judge, my recollection is that I did file a timely objection, but then at the hearing, there was, and I'm going back, Judge, and we're talking 3 years ago, and I'm just going off of recollection as well. That's Mr. Wood is. I believe that I filed an objection, and then at the time of the hearing, I may have orally stated that I'm not objecting to the introduction of the Brandon Boudreaux or the Charles Vallow information. And Mr. Thomas and Mr. Archibald continued theirs, and the hearing was continued on. And somewhere in the interim, Judge, there was a severance order granted. And I don't know whether I was part of the 404B motion. That's where I'm having some difficulty in recollection. My records don't show an order that you granted the 404B in this case, so I don't see an order in this case.
Okay, so just to clarify, there was an objection was filed on behalf of Mr. Daybell by Mr. Pryor, February 14th, 2023 to the 404B. We then had a hearing on the 404B evidence on February 22nd, 2023. The court then issued an oral ruling on the record, and in that oral ruling went through different evidence that was sought to be proffered under 404B. And among the rulings the court made on the court minutes under paragraph 9, specifically referencing consideration of the shooting at Mr. Boudreaux, the court weighed out the 404B arguments and found that it would be admissible at trial. And then in the hearing, I did indicate that I'd gone through the analysis for 404B, looking at the State versus Fox case, doing a two-tiered weighing of the factors, balancing them out with the evidence proffered, and ultimately, and I'm looking at the transcript of this hearing where I made the oral ruling, determining finally, quote, the court does find there is relevance under Tier 1, Parts 1 and 2 for the introduction of that evidence. And then I looked at Rule 403 to see if there was probative value to substantially outweigh the danger of unfair prejudice, and finally determined that as to the attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux, there would be more probative than unfairly prejudicial as it would relate back to the purported plan of the defendants. So the court did find that the state was permitted to introduce that 404B evidence. So as we stand here, knowing procedurally that's the ruling, on the timeline, I guess I'll first come back to this proposed Exhibit 31 and ask if there's any objection at this point for the defense, Mr. Pryor.
No, Judge.
Okay, so Exhibit 31 then has been offered and will be admitted. I would also note on the record that I think the court has been open to discuss that anyway based on opening argument as well. But for that reason, and also based on the court's prior determination made, I am going to permit that. reference on 404B evidence. The reason I'm still discussing this for council is I think this now triggers a requirement that I give a limiting instruction to the jurors about how 404B evidence is considered. And I do have to prepare a limiting instruction that I am going to advise them of at such point as after your exhibit's been offered, Mr. Wood.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for the delay there. We can bring the jurors back in, please.
So some sort of character evidence, prior bad acts evidence, something like that they want to bring in. So typically you can't use prior bad acts. You can't use character evidence, but there are exceptions.
I don't know where
And so that's what they're debating.
And Judge, if I could just quickly inquire before the jury comes back in, if the court did have both pages of that in its.
I only have first page.
Okay, once we get done with this witness, I'll bring that up.
Okay.
So we'll see what the evidence is. I'm not sure what exactly it is. Obviously, they haven't discussed it, but prior acts of Chad, presumably.
All right.
The books could be worse. The books could be worse, and the writing's not bad. I mean, it's not great, but it's not horrible. I'm modestly enjoying myself reading it. You know, it could be a lot worse. It's something.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, apologies for that delay. We were working through an evidence issue. I will note that the state has offered Exhibit 31, which is now.
Although to be fair, I'm not Mormon.
Timeline.
So maybe I'd be more offended if I know more about what I was reading.
For me at this time, I think would be best to give the jurors a special limiting instruction. So I'll read this instruction to the jurors at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, during the course of this trial, evidence will be introduced for the purpose of showing that the defendant committed acts other than for which the defendant is on trial. Such evidence, if believed, is not to be considered by you to prove the defendant's character or that the defendant has a disposition to commit crimes. Rather, such evidence may be considered by you only for the limited purpose of proving the defendant's motive, opportunity, intent, plan, or absence of mistake or accident.
Good luck with that.
So with that instruction provided, Mr. Wood, if you'd like to proceed with that exhibit, you may.
No, I don't have an exhibit.
Well, I believe the witness does.
May I publish?
Yes.
Just briefly before I do, Detective, before we took a break, we spoke about timeline you had prepared.
Correct.
And the reason you prepared that was to aid the jury in understanding the events of this case.
Yes.
If you can take your pointer and go through these events and just read them into the record.
July 11th, 2019, Charles Vallow dies. September 2nd through September 3rd, 2019. Lori, Alex, and the kids, JJ and Tylee, moved to Rexburg, Idaho. The last known proof of life for Tylee was September 8th, 2019. The last known proof of life for JJ was September 22nd, 2019. The attempted shooting at Brandon Boudreaux in Gilbert, Arizona, or attempted homicide, October 2nd, 2019. The attempted shooting of Tammy Daybell, October 9th, 2019. The death of Tammy Daybell, October 19th, 2019.
Maybe it would be on the second page.
November 1st, police receive a call about a Jeep. The Jeep was located November 4th, 2019. Chad and Lori get married in Hawaii, November 5th, 2019. Welfare check on JJ, November 26th, 2019, which is the same day Alex and Chad were contacted. The Rexburg Police Department searched Lori and Alex's apartments November 27th, 2019. Search warrant served on the Daybell residence was June 9th on 2020. JJ and Tylee were taken to the Ada County Coroner's office June 10th, 2020. And the autopsy was conducted June 11th of 2020.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wood. Mr. Pryor, cross-examination.
Judge, would the court like me to start, or would you like to take a break at the lunch break?
Let's go ahead and get started with cross and go till it was spent, please.
Good afternoon, all. Good morning, officer.
Good morning, sir.
We do know each other. We've at least exchanged pleasantries a couple of times.
Yes, sir.
In the past. And I guess for purposes of this hearing, would you prefer that I refer to you as lieutenant or officer?
Lieutenant's fine.
Mr. Pryor, I apologize very much for the interruption. I wanted to confirm something on that last exhibit. It was entered by the court. Is that a demonstrative exhibit?
That's what I understood.
Either as a demonstrative or summary.
Okay, thank you, counsel. Apologies for the interruption.
Judge, I'm also looking for the, oh, I found it. So, Lieutenant, you've been involved in a number of aspects in regards to this case, is that right?
That's correct.
You've done some investigation on your own in terms of a welfare check with Lori Vallow, is that right?
Yes.
But you've also interviewed a number of witnesses, is that correct?
Yes.
You interviewed Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, right?
Yes.
Several times?
A few times.
And you've interviewed a number of other witnesses as it relates to this case, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, now you previously discussed your role as a police officer and investigator in this case. And I guess I want to clarify something if we could, please. As a police officer investigating a case, your role is to conduct an investigation, right? Look at the facts.
Correct.
Try to establish and gain some information, right?
Correct.
But you're not supposed to judge one way or the other, right? You're supposed to remain neutral.
That's correct.
And you're not supposed to narrow that role as a police officer to a particular person. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In other words, you're supposed to look at the evidence as a whole. And rather than focusing on one person and saying, we're going to assume this person did this, and we're going to build our case around prosecuting that person, that would be inappropriate, wouldn't it?
Right.
Your role is actually to look at all the evidence, consider all the evidence. And once you've gathered all the evidence that you think is relevant to a case, what do you do with that evidence?
We follow the evidence.
Okay. And then once you follow the evidence and you've established a report or you've come to concluding your investigation, what do you do with that evidence that you've concluded with?
We put a case together.
Okay. And then do you provide it to someone?
We provide it to the prosecutors.
Okay. So there's distinct roles as part of a criminal case. You'd agree with that, right?
Yes.
And your role is to conduct an investigation, correct?
Correct.
Look into all possible evidence of any kind, correct?
That's correct.
And view the evidence, right?
Yes.
Not make any determination as to what that evidence means, but rather gather as much evidence as you think is relevant in your mind and put together a compilation of that evidence, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then at that point, only at that point, do you provide it to the prosecuting attorney and they make a determination as to whether or not they will pursue charges against somebody. Do you understand? Is that the way you understand the process is supposed to work?
Yes.
Okay. And if you were not to follow that process, if you were not to follow what I just described, that wouldn't be appropriate. There's protocols. You agree with that, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you should never blend the roles of a police officer with the role of a prosecuting attorney. You would agree with that, right?
Explain what you mean by blend the roles.
Well, I mean, it's not a prosecutor's role to show up at an investigation when you're conducting an investigation and engage in part of the process of an interviewing witnesses. You'd agree with that, right?
I've had prosecutors show up to certain investigations.
Okay, but that's not the norm, is it?
I think it depends on the investigation.
Okay, okay. So in other words, you think that it's appropriate that if a prosecutor is deciding whether to pursue charges against somebody, that they should also participate in the interviewing of these witnesses as part of that process. Is that what you're telling me?
I think it's important for a prosecutor to have all the information.
Well, doesn't that create a problem in your mind?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, let me talk to you a little bit about that. Because if you're doing an investigation and you're really remaining neutral as part of that investigation, right? You're not supposed to make judgments, correct?
Correct.
You're supposed to look at the evidence, gather all the evidence, and then make a determination of what evidence you want to submit to a prosecuting attorney, right?
Correct.
Do you ever get involved in the process of deciding whether someone should be charged or not?
What do you mean by that, sir?
Well, after the evidence is all gathered, and after you've done your report as a police officer and put together all of the information, do you ever go over to the prosecutor's office and say, you know what, I put this evidence together, and you know what, I want to have a discussion with you about whether or not we want to charge this person? That wouldn't be appropriate, would it?
I'm going to object as argumentative.
Sustained.
Okay.
What the hell are you doing,
Would it
man?
be appropriate for a prosecutor to interview witnesses and inject their personal opinion in those processes of interviewing witnesses? Would that be proper under any circumstances?
Yeah, I'm going to object as argumentative.
I'll overrule that objection.
And could you repeat the question again, Madam?
Yes. But would it be appropriate for a prosecutor to interview witnesses and inject their personal opinion in those processes of interviewing witnesses? Would that be proper under the circumstances?
To interject their personal opinion?
Yeah.
I would say probably not.
Okay. So if you're engaging in name calling or making references to a person's character in a case, that would clearly be an inappropriate act, would it not?
Objection beyond the scope, Your Honor.
That's sustained. It's facts, not evidence.
Right.
Now, you spoke a little bit about this body cam issue. And you said that it was a policy that there's only one body cam among 7 or 10 of you as detectives. Is that right?
No, sir, I never once said it was policy. I just said there was only one body cam.
Oh, so,
Between 7 detectives.
so in other words, you share a body cam. It's not a policy within the department.
Correct.
Okay, is there a policy in the department about recording or trying to preserve a record when you're interviewing witnesses?
Yes.
Okay, what's that policy, sir?
When we interview and conduct interviews in the police department,
Yeah.
those interviews are recorded.
Okay. Now, what about if you're out in the field and you're conducting an interview? Is that to be recorded as well?
There's no policy that says it has to be recorded.
Okay. Do you carry a microphone as well, officer, other than a body cam?
No, not on my person, I don't.
Okay. Do you carry a cell phone while you're doing that? That's issued by the county.
Do I keep the cell phone in my car? Yes,
I didn't ask you that. I said, do you carry a cell phone when you go out in the field?
on my person or my vehicle?
Either one.
My vehicle.
Okay. And does that cell phone have the technology that allows you to record or photograph and videotape images?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So what I understand is on November 26, 2019, you were directed, or you directed your folks to go out to the Lori Vallow residence. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and you said that you were with Ron Ball. Is that who you said you were with?
At one time, yes, I was with a couple different officers that day.
Oh, so tell me who you were with on that day. Remind me.
Detective Dave Holt,
Okay,
Detective David Stubbs,
okay.
and Lieutenant Ron Ball.
So there were 4 of you who went out there to locate or to find out some information about what again? Remind me.
About the whereabouts of J.J. Vallow.
Okay, and this was a concern that you had because you were contacted by another law enforcement agency expressing concern about the safety of a young child, right?
No, sir.
Okay, tell me what was the purpose?
It was a simple welfare check.
Okay. And you went out on this welfare check and there were, if my math is correct, please correct me. Did all 4 of you detectives and lieutenants go out at the same time?
No, sir.
You went out at different times.
Myself and Dave Holt went out initially.
Okay, and then when did the other 2 officers show up?
When I called them based on the lies that I had been told.
Okay. And these lies that you've been told, at that point, you and Detective Holt, neither of you decided to bring a video camera with you, right?
That's correct.
And neither of you decided to wear a recorder to record any of the incidents that took place about these so-called lies, right?
That's correct.
And nobody took out their phone and recorded it or made a video or audio recording of the discussion with Mr. Daybell or Mr. Cox on November 26, 2019, right?
That's correct.
And even after you said these so-called lies, even after you discovered that, Mr. Daybell apparently told you something that you didn't think was true, at that point, did you instruct any of the officers who were coming to aid you? Maybe it's a good idea we should bring an audio with, or a video camera with us, or
What the
a mic
fuck?
to record some of these statements, because I have some concerns. Did you think about that?
We did that, sir.
Hold on.
Okay. I'm going with that. There was an objection. I'm sustaining the objection. So strike the answer. You can ask another question, Mr. Pryor.
And it was Detective Stubbs who had the video cam, is that right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. And that was when you video cammed Miss Vallow, about when you had contact eventually with Miss Vallow, is that what the video camera that you're talking about?
I didn't have contact with Miss Vallow.
Now, I'm a little confused about something. And maybe you can clear this up. You said that
Yeah, it's coming in
you
very
asked Mr.
hot.
Daybell first. whether he had Lori Vallow's phone number, correct?
No, sir, I didn't contact Mr. Daybell until after I contacted Alex Cox.
Okay. At some point, did you ask for Lori Vallow's phone number for Mr. Daybell?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And at no point did you ever make a threat to him saying you're going to turn this phone number over to us, right?
No, sir.
At no point did any other officer walk up to him and say, if you don't turn this phone number over, you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. That never took place to your knowledge, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But then after that, you're saying, at first he said, I'm not going to give you the phone number. And then out of the blue, he decides to give you the phone number.
Objection, this states the facts and evidence.
Okay. Then subsequent to that, he's
Hold on, Mr. Pryor. When there's an objection, I'm going to rule on it before you launch into another question. So the objection is sustained.
subsequent to that, he decides to give you the phone number. Is that right?
Can you repeat the question, please?
I'll go back over the analysis here.
Thank you.
Your testimony is that Mr. Daybell refused to give you the phone number at first, correct?
That's correct.
And that was an adamant refusal. He said, no, I don't know what her phone number is, right?
That's correct.
And then without any further prompting by the police officers or any encouragement by law enforcement, he shows back up and gives you the phone number later, right?
Objection, he's misstating the facts and the
Well,
evidence.
I'm trying to establish the facts, Judge.
The objection's overruled. If the witness has an answer, he may answer.
You say he showed back up. He never left when I originally asked him.
Okay,
I had to ask him twice to get the phone number.
okay. And how much time passed between the first request and the second request?
Roughly a minute.
Okay. So without any prompting by the police, he asked him for the phone number. He denied, and then within 60 seconds, he said, oh, here's the phone number. Is that what your testimony is?
When Detective Hope started walking towards us and I re-asked him again, that's when he gave me the number.
So you had to ask him twice. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay. Fine. What?
Now I'm going to kind of bounce around a little bit, okay? Please bear with me, okay? You made a comment about supposed paintball guns, and if I misquote your testimony, please correct me, okay? You said something about a supposed paintball gun incident with Tammy Daybell, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you later on decided that it was the words you used were a shooting. Is that the words you used?
Probably.
Well, you were just here testifying a few minutes ago and just used the word shooting when Mr. Wood talked to you about that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, as part of your investigation, you got a chance to look at all the evidence, right? In this case, you got access to almost all the evidence in this case,
That's
right?
correct.
And have you gone through all the evidence in this case?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and did you look at evidence of facts and circumstances surrounding the Tammy Daybell incident on October 9th?
Yes.
Okay. And Judge, just bear with me.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this. It's
Your
like,
Honor, he's going to be showing evidence digitally. Can we put our screen back up?
yes, it's very much
Yeah.
Zoom. It is very much incredibly Zoom. It is all the Zoom.
Not sure I'm going to be up there about. Okay. Now, I would represent to you that we previously stipulated to the admission of a number of exhibits in this case. And one of the exhibits is exhibit number 16. Okay? and the parties that previously exhibited, Judge, we've already looked at it's already been exhibited. So what I'm going to do is show you Exhibit 16. Okay?
And this is one already admitted.
It's already been admitted, Judge, previously. Now, you talked about facts, and you used the word shooting is what you used, right? With Tammy Daybell?
Correct.
And you don't believe that Tammy Daybell was shot at with anything other than a paintball gun, do you?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
You don't believe that Tammy Daybell was shot with anything other than a paintball gun, do you?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay, and what do you base that on?
The evidence through our investigation.
Okay. And part of your investigation is did you look at the Tammy Daybell evidence that she provided to your office?
To my office or Fremont County?
Fremont County.
I did.
Okay. And one of the pieces of evidence is exhibit number 16. Judge, I don't see it going up.
All right, counsel, if you'd like, we can take a motion break, or we can keep moving on here for a minute.
Here we are, Judge.
Okay.
Okay, and officer, I'd have you turn to the screen and see if you can read the screen. Just read it. Not out loud, just to yourself. Let me know when you're done.
I'm done, sir.
Okay. And I would represent to you that this is a email from Tammy Daybell to her friends in the Salem 3rd Ward of her church. Okay? And would you start with the word something and read the email to me?
Something really weird just happened. I want you to know so you can watch out. I'd gotten home and parked in our front driveway. As I was getting stuff out of the back seat, a guy wearing a ski mask suddenly standing at the back of my car with a paintball gun. He shot at me several times, although I don't think it was loaded. I yelled for Chad and he ran around the back of the house. I have no idea what his motive was, and he never spoke, even after I asked him several times what he, though.
Okay. So, and do you see the date on this email? It's just about friends there.
I'm going to object to this being characterized as an email.
I'll sustain that.
Okay.
You want to clarify this part of what type of communication it is?
Well, it's a communication to the friends of the church, and I think it's a text
I'm
message.
sorry.
I can. I believe it's a text message. Judge, I may have misstated that it was an email.
Okay.
My apologies. So this text message went out to all of the friends of the Salem 3rd Ward. It's an LDS ward over in the town of Salem, right?
I can't answer
I
that.
don't know. You know where the town of Salem is, right?
I do.
And that's a town that's close to Rexburg?
Correct.
Okay. And obviously, you can't answer that about the ward or anything like that, but obviously the term ward would suggest that it's some sort of a religious...
What day of the week is it? It's Thursday?
folks that are talking to, right?
Correct.
Okay. But this email doesn't say that she was shot with a gun, or there's even a mention of a gun. The email talks about a paintball.
So we'll do Thursday Night Thunderdome tonight, so I won't be able to react tonight.
This is an email.
So I'll have to wait another day.
Judge, it's going to be...
I'm sorry. We'll speak for
Yeah. When there's an objection, Mr. Corrigan, gotta have time to get it on the record, make a ruling, and then respond, please. So if it's sustained, misstates the evidence.
Text.
I'm also going to object to this being described as a text message. There needs to be some foundation for what this evidence actually is.
Judge, I don't need a foundation. This has been admitted as an exhibit. This is
All right.
it.
I'll overrule that objection. Jury can do it in the format it came in with the screen capture.
Okay. So at any rate, this message from Ms. Daybell to the people in the 3rd Ward doesn't say that it was a gun, does it?
Says, that's it, it's a gun. It just says it's a paintball gun.
Oh, it says it's a paintball gun. You're right. Okay.
That's it.
It doesn't say any other gun, though, right? That there's any confusion about that, right?
Not in this email or text.
Okay. Did you also have an occasion to look at the I'll be bringing that up later, but the search engine from Tammy Daybell's account.
No, I did not look at the search engine for Tammy's.
Were you aware that, and I'm going to hack his name, but one of the officers, Officer K, he whatever his name is, Officer K, was provided email.
Whatever his name is.
Search information that Tammy Daybell engaged in regarding paintball guns in her picture. Were you aware of that?
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm asking whether he's aware of it.
Overruled.
Are you aware of it?
I was aware that he was provided information. I can't tell you exactly what information he was.
Okay, we'll get to that in another day. But did you
Yeah,
also
I agree.
listen
It's
to
very
the
off-putting.
911 call that was
It's not
made?
slimy. I wouldn't describe it as slimy.
I did.
It's belligerent.
And there was no mention.
It's
of
overly
that in it,
aggressive.
right?
It's
The mention in the 911 call is that
unduly
someone with a child
confrontational.
here tried to take a shot with a paintball gun, right?
He's dickish.
Okay. So the suggestion today that it was a gun is based on your own hunch, right?
No, sir.
Well, do you have the gun?
I have evidence of Google searches done by Alex Cox around that time.
Okay. Do you have information as to where Alex Cox was at the time of this alleged shooting?
Yes, sir.
You do have evidence of that?
He was at the Daybell residence earlier that day.
I didn't ask you on the day of the Daybell residence at the time of this shooting. And do you recall when this shooting took place?
I believe it was maybe 8 in the evening, maybe.
Right. And let's clarify this because the data that you have regarding him being at the residence was much earlier in the day, right?
That's correct.
And you don't have any data that shows that Alex Cox's phone dinged or any other communication device that Alex Cox had was at the location of the house at the time of this paintball incident, do you?
At the time, no, sir.
Okay. And so at this point, the information you're talking about is there's some Google searches by Alex Cox, correct?
That's correct.
And the information is that you've decided to not take into consideration Tammy Daybell's own statement about a paintball gun?
Objection misstates his testimony.
Sustained.
So what other information are you leaning on to suggest that this was anything but a paintball gun?
The Google searches performed by Alex Cox talked about shooting through Dodge
Self-interest.
Dakota.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
And I appreciate that.
It's
And,
too aggressive. His tone is too aggressive.
That would be one of Chad
It's too shouty.
and Tammy Daybell's vehicles. Is that correct?
It's off-putting.
Okay. Were you aware of who was driving the Dodge Dakota at the time that incident took place?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you talk to
Patronizing.
any
I
of
can
the
definitely see
family members,
patronizing.
Any of the 4 children about who was actually the driver of this Dodge Dakota that Alex Cox was trying to figure out a way to shoot through?
We attempted to contact those children and they wouldn't speak with us.
Okay. Okay, so you don't know whether Chad Daybell or Tammy Daybell were driving that Dodge Dakota, right?
That's correct.
So the reality is that Tammy Daybell was driving the Dodge Dakota. It sounds like Alex Cox had something for Tammy Daybell. Is that what you're suggesting?
What?
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just simply stating what Mr. Cox's Google searches were around the time of that shooting.
Okay, and you're basing those Google searches on your position that you believe this was a shooting, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so if Chad Daybell was driving the Dodge Dakota during this time, and he was the primary driver and maybe the only driver, would that mean then you would be looking at whether Alex Cox was trying to shoot Chad Daybell?
Chad Daybell didn't call in a 911 call and said he was shot at. Tammy Daybell.
Yeah, but Tammy Daybell called in a 911 call about a paintball gun. And it was a paintball gun. And we'll have Officer Cannon talk about that. And we'll listen to the 911 call.
Objection, that's not a question.
Well, the question is,
Mr. Pryor, again, you've got to give me an opportunity to roll an objection. If it is sustained, let's just argument, it's not a question. You can ask another question.
the shooting and the call that was taking place was in reference to a paintball gun incident, wasn't it?
Can you repeat the question, sir? I couldn't hear you.
The call that was made regarding this incident was a 911 call about a paintball incident, wasn't it? They used the words paintball in the 911 call, didn't they?
That's correct.
We'll move on. Okay. Now, we previously talked about, and Judge, I don't know where you want to stop. I've got a ways to go.
I think this probably is a good time for the lunch break, even though so we will take our lunch recess. That'll be an hour.
All right, cool.
And I'm coming back on for additional testimony around 10 and quarter after 1.
Quarter
All rise,
after?
please.
All right, cool. All right, we're on break for an hour, which means I get to have lunch, which is exciting for me. And otherwise take a break. So yeah, we're back on cross, and things are a little overly aggressive for my taste. I don't really like the way he starts. He started really fiery out of the gate, really overly aggressive. You know, you want to ideally like make this a little bit more subtle. If you could lull them into some sort of false sense of security, that'd be nice. Now, obviously with a detective, that's a little bit harder to do, but even if you can't really lull them into a false sense of security, you don't seem like such a dick to the jury. All right. So, like, first of all, you can try to lull them in, and it may or may not work. And second of all, it's just more professional anyway. And it's just like starts overly aggressive. You know, it's just way overly aggressive. So I don't really like what's going on there. To me, to be honest, I need to update the thumbnail for this afternoon. Yeah, it's too much. It's too much. Too aggressive. Too angry, too screedy, too yelly. I don't like to be yelled at. No one really likes to be yelled at. It's unwarranted at this time. There's a time and place for that, to be sure. Right out the gate is probably not it. You know, there's a time for like the confrontation, time for maybe a little bit more aggression, but it's like, it's a bad place to start, you know? Because you don't have that tool in your tool bag, you know, at the end. Bombastic. Yeah, bombastic's a decent way to put it. We're going to split it up into a stream. I was just creating a new stream, I think. I think we'll create a new stream for the afternoon. It's better. I was just going to create one. And I have to create a new thumbnail, and it's being slow. So I'm trying to very slowly create this. I should have probably created it earlier, but I forgot. So we are where we are. My internet is being incredibly slow right now, apparently. You can't really walk it back to buddy. Yeah. You know, a little good cop, bad cop. You know, when you're the only person, you got a good cop, bad cop it yourself. And if that's the way you want to play this, and it doesn't really work in a courtroom with starting with bad cop. I don't think, or at least he's not able to pull it off. I mean, I can say that. I mean, I don't know if it would ever work, but it's not working right now, in my humble opinion. Anytime this thing would like to download so I can create the thing would be great. All right, thank you. All right, so now I have to go over to create, go live. I have to schedule stream, reuse settings. This will be 11th p.m. Change the thumbnail. Oh, it didn't download yet. Okay, change the thumbnail, do that. Now I need to change the time. It's going to be 2:15, not 1:15. $2:15 p.m. Great. Created. Good. Back to this stream. Edit. Set up the redirect. to save. Okay, great. All right, I will see you in about an hour. Until later, my friends, I hope all's well. Cheers, my friends, for now, and goodbye.